Good evening, everybody, and welcome to East Gippsland Shire's Council meeting of Tuesday, the 17th of December 2024. East Gippsland Shire Council live streams, records and publishes its meetings via webcasting. These recordings are available for viewing by the public by the following link on Council's website. During the meeting, any members of the public who are addressing the Council will have their image and comments recorded. No other person has the right to record Council meetings unless approval has been granted by the Chair. In line with the Local Government Act 2020, councillors are able to attend Council meetings electronically or in person, and the meetings will be open to the public via live streaming. If technical difficulties are experienced with the live streaming during the meeting, we will adjourn until the issue is resolved. If technical issues can't be resolved, the meeting may be postponed to a later time or date. So at 1.1, we have recognition of traditional custodians. So East Gippsland Shire acknowledges the Gunai-Kurnai, the Monero and the Bidawal people as the traditional owners of this land that encompasses East Gippsland Shire and their enduring relationship with country. The traditional owners have cared and nurtured East Gippsland for tens of thousands of years. Council value their living culture and practices and their right to self-determination. Council pays respect to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders, people living in East Gippsland, their elders past, present and future. Our next Council meeting is scheduled to be held on Tuesday the 18th of February 2025. Have I jumped a page? No. I'm going all right. There you go. I told you I was going to shorten this meeting up. I believe we don't need to do this piece. We do not have anybody online. So we can jump that page. So it is good to see all councillors present here tonight. Now, at 1.2, are there any apologies for tonight, CEO, please?
No, Mayor, we've got everybody here, thank you.
All right, thank you. 1.3, ask for, are there any people here who have a declaration of a conflict of interest on any item tonight? Thank you, Ms Johnson. Could you please tell us what item is your conflict of interest?
Thank you, Mayor. I have a conflict on item 5.2.1, and I'll leave the room for that item.
Thank you. Duly noted. So at 1.4 is the confirmation of the minutes from our last meeting. So, councillors, we now move on to this item of 1.4 for the confirmation. Do I have a mover to confirm the minutes of the council meeting held Tuesday, December 3, 2024? Thank you, Councillor Allen, and Councillor Cook seconding. Thank you. I expect you to have something to say, please, mover.
No, nothing to add. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Cook?
Oh, yes, thank you, Mayor. They are an accurate reflection of that meeting. Thank you.
Good, thank you. So 1.5 is our next meeting, and the next council meeting is scheduled to be held on wow. Oh, just bring on Christmas, please. To that last motion, we need to vote. So all those in favour of accepting the minutes from that meeting?
Unanimous.
That is unanimous. Thank you, councillors. So I think I've tried to do this. This is the third time. We have a next meeting on Tuesday the 18th of February 2025 at the Corporate Centre here, 273 Main Street, Bairnsdale, commencing at 6 p.m. Now at 1.6, I'll ask the CEO, do we have any requests for leave of absence?
Thank you, Mayor. No, I've received no request for leave of absence.
Thank you. So at 1.7, we will now move on to open forum for the first item, and it is 1.7.1 petitions. So Council has received a petition in relation to the Peninsula Lakes Estate Water Mitigation Project, which is at 1.7.1.1 on tonight's agenda. So before the petition is presented, I will ask Ms Judy Clark to speak to the item. Ms Clark, please come forward to the chamber table and you have 5 minutes to speak. So thank you for your attendance.
Okay. Can you hear me? Yes. This one? Okay. Good. Newbie. Lovely. So I fit right in. Okay, well, thank you for having me. It's really important that we have this opportunity to get together in a very open and friendly manner, and I'm hoping that this could be quite a bit of fun, really. So I am Judy Clark. I'm a Paynesville resident. My entire life work has been around family and children and integrating a future that's a safe environment with those children and providing them with the joys and the experiences that I myself grew up with in the 50s. I do personally apologise to the future generation for destroying the frog population by, if you remember, all my age, catching all those taddies when we were little and letting them die in the bucket. So I became involved in this particular petition, which is around what I was calling the Peninsula Lakes Estate Water Management and Flood Mitigation Scheme, and that name was taken from the original developer's plans of 2008, through a chance discussion with a friend on gardening, which then led to discussion of that whole site. So if you know the site at all, it is quite a large site. It's in the middle of the old Paynesville if I'm looking south to the east, and then the newer areas to the west. And that bit will also then abut onto the new Paynesville growth structure that goes from coast area through to Grandview Road, which is not exactly in tonight's discussion, but to be aware of it, because part of that growth structure will impact on the mitigation area. So after the discussion, we decided we'd raise the petition, talk to the residents, and in a little under 3 weeks, I did very little work on it, a couple of stalls, 2 nights of stuffing letterboxes, and a couple of days of doing door-to-door housing. We raised house signatures. We raised 240 petitions online, and I think, and I lost count because I lost the papers, 30 to 40 petitions, signatures on paper. Wherever I went, the story was the same, and basically what was written in the petition letter was taken verbatim from the concerns expressed in that initial meeting and repeated time after time after time as I interviewed and talked to the people in the public and in the surrounding areas. And just to summarise them, if you haven't had a chance to catch up, or for people in the gallery, there was a lot of anger in the residents at the long delay of at least 5 years in getting this project through and completed. They had great loss of faith in the council. Now, as a former council worker, I find that very, very distressing, because I do feel that as the council, this is the place that the residents should be able to turn to get clear direction and answers. There was a great loss of faith in the council expressed in the ability to get this job done. And 5 years? Why not? There was a lot of complaints about lack of communication from council back to residents. So people saying, I rang them to complain about the dust, the dirt, the fact that there were trees taken out. No one got back to me. And that was repeated for 5 years of people saying it. They felt disrespected by council. There was no communication, no answers. The degradation of the area, the denuding of the area has led to a dreadful aesthetics for people living in the area, a loss of house capital. It's certainly, I wouldn't buy into it with the dust storms and the ugliness of the area. There's difficulties of living through that time. Illness, higher respiratory illnesses, poor play areas for the children. Just went on and on about the difficulties of living in this. So what we're asking, now, the name has been confusing. There's no sense of place there. No one knows that they actually live there or what happens. It's so disjointed. So the people don't know the name of the area. I called it the Peninsula Lakes. It's been referred to as Parksville Park. Is it the Toonalook Waters plan? Because there is already a Toonalook, it was 4 minutes past when I started, so yeah, 5 minutes. So is it the Toonalook Waters plan? Because there is a Toonalook later. What? I'll just get right to the end. Our
That's really
simple
good.
request is...
That's good because my arithmetic says 6 minutes now if you started at
You
6:04.
said 6 minutes. You said I could have 6 minutes because there was no Zoom. So basically, there is so much anger and disfaith and so on. What I'm suggesting is we want two things. We want a community update as soon as possible, and we want further consultation around the uses, the definition of that land. Is it a wetland? Is it water? What is it? Is it a community park? No one knows, but the feeling in the residents down there is if you go down there with community consultation, you'll have to go in very gentle. There'll be a lot of education. Is it a lawn area? Is it an environment area? So it's an area that needs to be handled with really kid gloves.
Good.
And that's what we're asking.
Thank you so
Okay.
much, Ms Clark.
Thank
you. But before you go, we have Ms Johnson who can speak
Oh, good.
Speak
Hello.
to this.
Yes, I saw you on there. Yes.
So in all that, because it was quite an intense discussion about your petition and the area, but do any councillors have any questions of clarification around what it was that's requested in the petition? I see none, so we can go. We can keep going.
Yes.
Thank you. Look, we really appreciate you coming in and we really appreciate the work you've gone into putting into the petition. So what happens now is that we receive the petition, and so my role, because governance sits in my portfolio, is to officially receive the petition and put it forward to the council for consideration. So they've got a copy of it, obviously, and that's appeared in the papers. What the recommendation says, though, is that the actual responsible area is under Chris Stevenson's area, so he's obviously sitting behind us here today. And so he's already in the...
General manager, right? Yes.
Yep, so he's already so it sits in his response, yeah. And so he's obviously already with his team working on a response to get back to you as soon as we possibly can,
Great.
and to consider some of the concerns that you've got.
Super. That's
So
lovely.
I think that's what I need to say, Mayor. So back over to you for the recommendation as presented.
So councillors, is there? We have this officer recommendation in the report. So, do I have a mover? Okay, we'll go with Deputy Mayor Councillor Buckley as a mover, and Councillor Tom Crook as a seconder. So, would you like to speak to the motion, please?
Certainly. Look, I really respect community bringing their concerns to us. I think it's a valuable exercise in ensuring that we have that community consultation process that is healthy, robust. If there's lessons that we can learn that have happened in the past, this is a good forum to present those so that we can move forward, you know, with the best management practices in place. And I look forward to hearing more about the project and what we do to resolve it. So thank you for bringing the petition to us as a councillor group.
Great. Thank you. That's good.
Councillor Crook?
Sure, just to reiterate what Councillor Buckley said there, thanks for bringing this to our attention. It sounds like we need to take your advice and consult more closely with the community over that particular issue that you've identified. So thanks for bringing it to us.
You're welcome. Good luck with it.
Thank
So,
you.
councillors, would anyone like to speak against the motion? I see nobody. So I'll now put the motion to the vote. So, councillors, all those in favour? That is unanimous. And I thank you for speaking, and I do thank you for the fact that you've spoken about something you're very passionate about and it's important, but I thank you for the cheerful manner in which you presented. So thank you.
You're welcome. Why drag it out, eh? Good. Thank you very much. It's, I feel very comforted to know that's been listened to and that you're doing some actions. Lovely. Thank you. Great. All right.
So I'll now ask our CEO, Ms Weigel, are there any questions of council?
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, we have 3 people in the gallery tonight who wish to ask questions of council. The first one is Diane Crooks. I'm going to ask her to come forward and ask her question, and then we'll have one of our general managers respond.
So, excuse me, so before Diane speaks, I probably need to read this out just to recognise that members of the public addressing council are reminded to extend due courtesy and respect to the council, its staff and the processes under which we operate, and shall take direction from the chair whenever called upon to do so. So that there will be no discussion or debate with the attendee for public questions or submissions. However, councillors may ask questions of clarification of the attendee. So, as Chair, I reserve the right to cease a question or submission at any point if it is deemed inappropriate or inconsistent with Council's governance rules or mutual respect charter. So, each person who wishes to address Council are allocated a maximum of 5 minutes of speaking time. So, I do now ask you, Ms Crooks, to come forward and ask your question.
Okay, is that on? My question today concerns the new playground at Lakes Entrance and the amount of water that's being wasted from our water system. Oh, sorry, I'm getting very emotional here. System here in Lakes Entrance or in East Gippsland. I've been told by contacting the Shire that reticulating or circulating the water like at Meetung was not fitted into the budget, and every day litres and litres of water are coming out of our water system and going into the lake. I'd like to know why it could not be put into the budget, particularly when in the last week they have dug out one section of the garden, put in a new bike stand for the bikes, concreted all that in, and also had to repair the slide which was damaged after the rain. And also, we in our travel guide for people, it says that we are an eco-accredited society area, and also to visitors to make sure that you care and look after the amount of water that you use. And with summer coming on, maybe we have water restrictions with the heat that we've had. Why cannot the council do something about stopping this water being wasted? And also another thing that's come to my attention is, which was put on the Facebook chatterbox for Lakes Entrance last night, is the safety concerns with the playground. Apparently there's been 3 children who have broken bones on the water area because it's very slippery, and several children falling over, hitting their heads, etc. And I just think it's just, we've got a time coming up with lots of tourists in the areas, hot summer, maybe more water restrictions, and the Shire's not putting on a very good example of wasting this water, gallons and gallons, litres and litres.
Okay, thank you. Some of that at the back end of your ask was actually not really a question, but you've done exceptionally well and to deliver your question. So I'll just ask an officer who is our General Manager of Place and Community to respond to your question. Oh, sorry. Right now?
Thank you.
Here we go.
Thank you, Mayor.
No.
Just get
Please,
questions.
questions from councillors. Poor Diane. Yes, from Sonia.
It's a question but also a comment. I just firstly would like to thank you to have the bravery to get up and speak.
My question is something going to be done
Yes.
about containing this water and not wasting it?
Yes, and the officer will respond to that, your actual question, but I just wanted to make the comment, it's very brave of you to get up and speak about this. I know it's a hard thing, so I just wanted to make note of that. But also to pose the question to yourself, the groups, the people that you've been speaking to, has it been a fairly large group of people that you feel that are very motivated by the concerns that you're bringing to council? Has there been a community consultation, or is it more a personal?
It's just been a personal thing.
Yeah.
When I have spoken to local people who have been there, they thought that the water was being recycled like at the Meetung one, and they were really shocked to know that it was actually going directly into the lake.
Well, look, thank you for your valid concerns.
Thank you.
Thank you.
No more questions.
Thanks, Mayor. Firstly, I'll just confirm, yes, it is being used currently with town water supply. So just to confirm that that is the case. There are a couple of things that are in place to reduce the amount of water that's used. So both in terms of the system's an on-demand system, so press button for the water to flow. It's not flowing all the time, it's when people are there and playing. And secondly, it's only turned on at certain hours, so it can be restricted in that way. The other thing which I think I just note is if we do end up in a position where we're in water restrictions or similar, the use of the water play area can be constrained as in turned off or similar. The key issue here has been, and it is one of cost and practicality. So as we've looked at recirculated systems like in Meetung, from a regulatory perspective and what we need to do to protect public health and what the Department of Health requires of us, as if we're running an aquatic facility, as if we're running a swimming pool, effectively, in terms of water quality and water treatment. But yes, there is some costs associated with that in terms of construction, but also in terms of ongoing management throughout the year. So it is a matter that we need to weigh up, and at this stage the system is operating there as a single pass system. We will continue to review that and look at what the options are to reuse the water. It may not be a closed system, but there may be other ways in which we can reuse the water effectively to, again, constrain that or limit that use from the town system. But again, if we get into a situation where there is water restrictions, then they clearly will take appropriate action at that point. And the last point is I'm really sorry to hear of people with any injuries or similar. And if you do come across someone, just please encourage them to talk to council so that we can understand exactly what happened, and if there is something we need to do, we can do that.
That has been suggested by people who have commented about the injuries, that if anything happens in the future that they do that.
Yeah.
But also, who's actually paying for the water that's going through that system?
So the council's paying for it, yeah.
The council's paying for it?
Yep.
So where's that money come from?
Okay.
I pay my water rates for my water I use. And I also pay for that.
You did ask your question and officer has responded, so you can't keep the debate going.
Okay.
Thank you very much, though. Thank you. So now we have Mr. Morris Borgelt. Ask him to come forward and welcome, and please ask your question.
Following Council's December 3 question time answer that the Lakes Entrance Carnival licence did not provide for pedestrian through traffic 24 hours per day, and Council's refusal to provide the offered meeting for me to clear up Council's misreading of the licence before now, some 2 weeks later. I wish to present the evidence now. Item 12 of the licence agreement schedule states the operation of the carnival is to be in accordance with the EOI, which is the expression of interest for the carnival. In item 2.2 of the expression of interest states the site will remain open and accessible for pedestrians and through traffic during operation and when not in operation. And then in item 2.3 of the expressions of interest states also give free access to the general public during and after operational hours. Given this, will the council now ensure that council's Lakes Entrance Carnival is operated in accordance with the licence it has issued? If not, why not?
Thank you for your question. So, councillors, do we have any questions of Mr. Borgelt?
Just one, if I may, Mayor. So am I of the understanding, because I haven't drilled down into the contract because it's an operational matter, but I'm sure that we'll get a response from the officer. But so what you're saying, just so that I'm clear, is that in the expression of interest and in the contract itself, it says that there's going to be free access to the actual carnival. Is there a fee to enter the carnival is my question?
The carnival area.
The carnival area. So it's free to still access that. You don't have to pay to access the
While it's
carnival.
open.
While
But
it's
also
open.
it's got to be accessible when it's closed, according to the licence. Both open and closed, it has to be open and accessible for through traffic, as per what's in the licence.
Right, so I suppose my question will then, am I able to pose a question to the officer? No.
The officer will address that and will probably...
Address that during, yeah, okay, thanks for that clarification. I suppose my other question is, would it be, in your view, safe to enter after hours into the carnival area once it's closed?
Well, that's how other carnivals work, like Rye, the biggest carnival in Lakes Entrance, has never been gated and locked up. Same for Portland, and the same for, not Wye River, the next place along.
No, that's okay. I think you've sufficiently
it's
answered.
normal
Thank you very
not
much.
to be gated.
Yeah, okay, thank you for that clarification.
So I will ask again, have any other councillors got questions for Mr Borgelt? Okay, so with that, I would ask Ms Johnson if she could give a response to Mr Borgelt's question, please.
Thank you, Mayor. And thank you for the question again, Morris. Look, I did send you an email straight after that meeting that night, and I apologise. As I understand it, that's not your preferred method of communication, and I think that then there was a misunderstanding about the Fridays that we're catching up. So we do have a meeting this Friday, and I know that you did come in last Friday and spoke to some of the staff here as well. So on the first point, I just wanted to say that I am sorry that we did have the miscommunication, and now I know that I either have to call you if it's the best way of getting in contact with you. In regards to...
Except you didn't send the email to me, you sent it to someone else.
I did send that email.
So how come I didn't get it? And it wasn't addressed to me.
Well, I think we can talk about that on Friday again, if you like,
we can
Morris.
take that to another place, so please continue, Ms Johnson.
Yep, no, that's fine. Look, so to address your question, I suppose, and it is a little bit of a convoluted process in the sense that the current licence agreement allows for adequate fencing to be in place as in section 14.6 of the licence agreement, and again we can go through this in detail on Friday if you'd like to. What actually happened was we had an EOI that was sent out, and the current operator responded to that EOI and were put in place under that EOI. We then aligned the next agreement with the Marine and Coastal Act consent, which, as you understand, sits under DECA, and I understand you've been in discussions with DECA as well on this particular matter a few times too.
A few times.
Apologies. So what that means is that under the new licence agreement that was signed for the further 2 years to align with the Marine and Coastal Act consent, it doesn't actually go back to and refer back to that EOI as stated. And what it does allow for in section 14.6 is adequate fencing. And again, the adequate fencing is really about the safety and security of public and the safety and security of the operator's assets.
It explains in it what adequate fencing is.
Please, could you just let Ms Johnson finish, because she sat there and listened to your question and comments, so
Well, last week she didn't give me an even roughly credible answer, and this week she's had all this time to come up with what it involves, and she's still not there.
Okay, what might happen or be the best outcome here would be that we organise through the offices that perhaps you have a one-on-one discussion.
We do it
So
again.
offline would probably get to the bottom of what it is you're really asking, and could save embarrassment for everybody here with this toing and froing. And so I just ask that you possibly accept the explanation tonight, but are reintroduced to Ms Johnson offline, where she can have a one-on-one discussion with you, possibly bring out some documentation, etc., to satisfy your question.
I have the documentation. We went through this last week.
If I
Please.
may, Mayor. We hear what you're saying, Morris, and Sarah has apologised for the confusion in trying to set up the meeting. We're very genuine in our wanting to sit down and work you through the documentation. However, the council meeting only allows you to ask a question. It doesn't allow for dialogue, which is why we're suggesting that sitting down and meeting on Friday, which I understand is now set up, and we apologise for the
Which is
confusion.
3 weeks after the original offer. Ridiculous.
And we were just thinking that that'll be the best way to get to the bottom of this, when you can sit down one-on-one and go through all the documents.
So please, I hope you will accept that as an answer to your question.
It's an answer.
And a partial answer, as you keep saying, you're not satisfied, but I believe that using up all this time within the chamber, when we offer you a one-on-one which could last for whatever time it takes for you to ask and be responded to in a respectful way, I think is the best outcome. So thank you for your question.
On the 20th of December, one day after, you close for a week and a half.
The office doesn't close. Like your questions will be answered, and I just respectfully ask that we finish this discussion right now and allow another speaker forward to ask their question.
Good. Thank you.
No, I think we have Miss Judith Meyer who has a question to ask. Is she present? Welcome, and come forward. Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor, councillors and the gallery behind me. I just would like to follow through from Judy Clark's opening with her 5 minutes or a bit longer this evening. So my question is, being a resident, I'm at 19A Bishop View in Paynesville, so I look directly over at the reserve. And my question is, what management will there be controlling noxious weeds, that is thistles, blackberries, and how will it be carried out, taking into consideration of stormwater going into the lake? So that was my first question.
Good. Oh,
and my
there you go.
second one is...
Oh, okay. Please,
right,
go ahead.
when the planting along Bishop View is completed, does that include trees being planted for shade and prevention of erosion?
Good points, well made. My running sheet has this in reverse, but I was pulled up, but I must say incorrectly, but I will follow what I've been doing, so I'll ask the councillors right now before you get a response. Are there any questions? Thank you, Councillor Crook.
Yes, thanks for your submission. What's the extent of the weed infestation currently?
Well, I've been walking through that area and there's quite a lot of blackberries coming up, a lot of thistles because of the high wind we've had, and a lot of the topsoil was removed, or most of it. We're just finding that with all the movement of the soil from different areas where the new builds have been, it's brought seed with it. I've been in the area for 4 years. Prior to that, there were blackberries down on the corner of Ashley and Haylock Street where they had that first small dam, and that was quite prolific and probably are still there, although they've done a lot of work leading into that with the stormwater. But there is a lot coming up if you would like at some stage to walk through that area. I do come off a farm from another area, and I know with my council that blackberries were a no-no, and they needed to be looked at before they get to the fruiting stage.
Regionally controlled, I believe.
So that was my concern, because I'm finding, being a resident, all of the seeds are actually blowing into the garden now as well.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. Councillors, any other questions? Okay, I think we could ask Mr Stevenson to respond to that, well-spoken questions.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor, and thanks for the question. So the wetland stormwater retarding system and the associated landscaping is still under construction by the private contractor as part of the subdivision works for the Paynesville Park Development, once the works are completed and a certificate of compliance is issued, the developer is then required to take maintenance over that site for a period of 2 years. So that's their accountability. During the maintenance period, the control of weeds will be the responsibility of the developer, and we need to monitor that at council. After the maintenance period is ended, council will then undertake the maintenance of the area, and weed control as part of the ongoing open space maintenance program. And I do take your point of us going out to have a look at the site, and I'll certainly follow up with that.
Am I allowed to ask a question? What is the maintenance period? When did that start and when does that finish? That Cranes have been looking after that? Or was that a question that no one wants to actually answer?
Well,
I'm happy to have a discussion on the site.
You had two questions.
Yeah, that's fair enough.
And a third one, what's the matter?
And noting the earlier presentation, we can meet on site and have a discussion as well. So,
Appreciate
yeah.
that. Thank you.
In relation to your second question, the answer is yes. In relation to planting, the approved landscaping plans for the reserve include erosion control, matting and substantial planting, including marshland tube stock plantings for erosion, and semi-advanced trees in areas outside of the wetland areas.
Okay. So will you yourself come?
That's
to have a look?
4.
I'm a person that can't keep very quiet, I'm sorry, so I've done very well. It must be the name Judy, I think.
Well, thank you very much for
That's
coming
all right.
forward and asking those questions.
I
And
appreciate the time.
thank you, Mr Stevenson, for those
Thanks.
probably very welcome response. So our next item is 1.7.3, which is public submissions. And in that, we have 6 speakers for tonight. The first speaker for tonight is Ms Clark, who has already spoken. I'll probably have to ask that you maybe cut your next discussion back to the allotted time of 5 minutes, please.
I think we've moved it forward, so she doesn't need to speak again.
Oh, that would have been handy to know. You're off the hook. You don't need to speak again. All right, so
Mr Hess hasn't arrived yet, so we might go to all the others.
I have a Miss Danielle Matthews. Would she like to come forward and speak?
Thank you, Mayor and councillors, for hearing us speak today. So I am speaking further to Judy's petition. So my name's Danielle Matthews and I reside with my family at 90 Ashley Street in Paynesville. Now, Ashley Street is the north end of what I call the wetlands. I don't really know what else to call it. To me, I look out and it looks like a wetlands. So we've got the brand new wetlands thing going on, and then in front of that is the existing park on Ashley Street. Now, I was one of the very, very first homes to build in Paynesville Park Stage 1. The block of land we bought is right across the road from the park, and we chose that block because we knew we would never ever have neighbours across the road. We've got a lovely view of the park and the beautiful nature areas surrounding it. So when this new wetlands, started in the rest of Paynesville Park, Stage 2, 3, 4, whatever we're up to now, really looking forward to, this is going to be beautiful to look out my front windows and have a look at this. My issue today is something that Judy didn't even consider. I was chatting to Judy when she was doing her mailbox drops and said, yep, all for it, great. However, parking is an issue. There's no parking whatsoever, and that's something that hadn't really occurred to Judy. So on Ashley Street, we have the park, family park, not one car park is available. The playground is frequented by families on a weekly basis. They've got nowhere to park. They're parking on the verge. They're parking on the footpath. They're parking on our front lawns. They're driving right across the footpath and just parking anywhere in the park area so that they're close to the playground and to the barbecue. There's often kids' parties there, and again, cars dotted all around the place. Now that we've got these new wetlands, you've got more people coming and walking their dogs around. Again, nowhere to park. We also have the staff of the Nature's Playground Early Learning Centre who park on both sides of the street, on the verge, half on the verge and half on the road. They are there 5 days a week for a minimum of 8 hours a day, and there is a minimum of 8 cars there every single day. The childcare centre takes up 3 blocks of land, so all in front of their blocks, and then across the road where the park is, they just take up the whole lot. The parking of the childcare centre creates the road to be even narrower than it already is, and the access through is then only suitable for 1 lane of traffic. Really not convenient. It's the road that the primary school's on, so you've got loads of traffic doing school drop-offs and pickups. You've got that road being used for the people who live in Paynesville Park, getting to their houses, and you've also now got the residents of Palm Lake Resort. So not only is the lack of parking dangerous, you've got parents and staff crossing the road with young kids, but we've also had 2 accidents in this area due to the congestion, with cars actually smashing into the trees on the side of the road just in front of the footpaths. My real bugbear with this situation, it's an absolute eyesore. It makes our street look like trailer trash. Every house in Paynesville Park is a brand new construction, and we've got this one small area between one roundabout and the next that just spoils the whole estate. So I would actually urge all of you at some stage, Monday to Friday, anytime between 9 and 5, take a drive down Ashley Street and just have a look for yourself. It's really ugly. My husband and I and our neighbour have been reporting this situation via emails and phone calls, submitting photo evidence for over a year to council. I actually sat in this room years ago when the childcare centre planning permit was being discussed. We were told there would be ample parking for every family and every staff member. There would be nobody parking on our lawns, nobody parking on the side of the road. Totally incorrect. There was also various things that were to happen within the childcare centre. There was supposed to be sound barrier fences. There was supposed to be tall planting between the childcare centre and the neighbours. That hasn't happened either. There was also supposed to be no parking signs placed along both sides of the roads. This didn't happen until 2 weeks ago because I'm constantly whinging about it. However, the signs are tiny. You cannot see them at all, and all of the staff are still parking on the side of the road. All of these conditions were actually in the planning permit for the childcare centre, but none of them have been followed through or followed up by council or the planning department. They have a planning permit, end of story. We also had a council employee, I have a feeling it was just somebody on the front phones, who just blatantly lied to us to say the childcare centre have a permit to park on the footpaths. And then another staff member said there is no such permit, that permit doesn't exist. So I think just that young kid was sick of us whinging. We've also got the Palm Lakes Resort behind us, which is under construction. Visitors can't drive in there, so that's more parking. So what we're asking for is a minimum of 12 car parks on the park side of Ashley Street, which will allow people to visit the park, visit the new wetlands, take your kids there, picnics. Parking is desperate in that area.
Good, thank you. Well spoken. Now, councillors, there are no questions that can be asked, but you may ask for some clarification if there's something that you weren't quite sure of. So we have been very... Oh, Councillor Crook.
Thanks. I live not far from there, so I will come and have a look.
Thank you.
Just for clarification, we're talking between Ashley and King Street, that far down or not?
No, no. So you've just come
Coast.
off. You've just come
Okay.
off the coast estate, and
Yep,
you've
yep.
just turned onto Ashley. So it's right where the park is, and right where this new wetlands area is.
Okay.
Very small area. From
Yep,
the
I can
first
see where you
roundabout
mean.
To the next. Yep.
Gotcha.
Yep.
Thank you.
No worries.
Councillor Eastman, clarification?
Yeah, clarification. The childcare centre, is that council or something else?
Private.
Private. Thank you.
So thank you. I'd just like to add one small comment. I do remember that session in council. I was here. So thank you for reminding us.
No worries. Thank you.
Now, are you Mr Hess? Good, yes, because we were looking for you, but you've arrived just in time. So come forward, please. Go ahead, yes.
Yeah, well, we urgently need a duck pond at, in Orbost. We've got a swimming pool there, public swimming pool, but the ducks keep hanging around the swimming pool and every day they get kicked out, which is sad to see, and they make a bit of a mess at the swimming pool. So we do need a duck pond somewhere in the town. We could have it at Forest Park. There's plenty of room there, or we can even have a duck pond at the swimming pool. There's a sort of a large area at the back there, and it could also offer as a drainage point for the cricket ground. So we could kill two birds with one stone, and keep the ducks alive.
Or two ducks.
And, you know, I think, you know, so yeah, we do need a duck pond. So if we're going to be inclusive in our town, we need to include ducks. And that's it, really. I'm happy to help start digging the hole. Yeah, I'm pretty keen to start digging. So it'll take me a while with my shovel, but anyway, that's it, really.
Well, thank you. So, councillors, questions of clarification? Okay, Councillor Crook.
There's a lot I could say on that, but I won't because I'm not allowed to. So I'll just ask a question.
No, not a question, a clarification,
Yes,
please.
a question of clarification.
Yeah.
The ducks that are residing in the pool that are being flushed on a regular basis,
Yeah.
are they then going to the river and coming
No,
back
they
again?
hang around at the park. They still hang around at the park. They hang around at the cricket ground, and they just hang around. I've seen them. They just hang around. So they wait till the pool is clear, and then they go back in.
So these ducks have become friendly with the pool, shall we say?
They do. They have become very friendly with the pool. It's their home, but the problem is they do make a fair bit of mess there, which would be annoying to the staff who have to clean it up and probably be a bit of a health hazard.
Sure.
But there is room. We can live with ducks, and I think we've got to make an effort to try and live with them.
Thank you. I agree.
All right.
Thank you, Councillor Buckley. More clarification?
Yes, look, thank you for bringing this to our attention. So the question is around if that duck pond is built,
Yeah.
how will we make the ducks go to the pond and not to the pool?
Well, I mean, I don't know. I mean, you might have to get a duck therapist or something like that. You know, if it's there, they
Train
will,
them.
There's a saying: build it and they will come.
Thank you very much.
Good, thank you. So I would imagine that officers are right onto it. Duly noted, duly noted.
All right, thank you.
Good,
Thanks for your time.
thanks for your submission. He's not there to answer. He's gone. So we have Miss Josephine Jacoby. She would like to speak to us, so please come forward. Okay. Just clarification.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak.
You're
to
most
council.
welcome.
I'm going to read it, just simply read what I've written. I want to pose a question about the Palmers Road Hill at Lakes Entrance. It is the site of the Shire offices and has a substantial belt of restored bushland. The hill, which I believe to be 14.9 hectares of open space, is the last undeveloped high ground with a sweeping view of the location that is the town's identity. Here is an opportunity to put into practice the idea of futuring, to pave the way for something that will be of real value and lasting benefit to future generations. The building is currently used as office space for some East Gippsland Shire staff. It could become a school of natural philosophy where the plan for landscaping, water flow management, public recreational use and garden design could be developed. There's a rare opportunity here to occupy the site while the design is developed, learning by observation, teaching by engaged immersion in the environment, a slow, loving process of learning and growing, a never-ending relationship with the land where the knowledge gained is forever written in the hill and its flora and fauna. 100 years into the future, the townsfolk could be walking the pathways of parkland on the hill, enjoying sheltered grottos, basking on sunny plateaus, watching songbirds in the botanical gardens, dabbling in ponds that are that escaped into the land. This hill, with its white elephant reputation, could be as beloved to the townsfolk as Kings Park is to Perth. I've been talking for some months about this, just to anyone who'll listen, really, and I've spoken with Greening Australia, and they've offered wholehearted, enthusiastic support. I've spoken to the Gippsland Community Foundation, and they're interested in the possibilities. I spoke with Michelle yesterday. Business Volunteers Australia has offered support by developing a business plan as to how such an idea could be self-funded eventually. LEADER is aware of the proposal and has been encouraging. Float supports the idea. RMIT has encouraged me to develop the concept and get back to them with the possibility of a research project involved in that. And there's an expanding group of local people who are keen to help. So my question, with the intention of creating something of long-term value and real benefit to our region, will the East Gippsland Shire Council activate and support a plan to turn Palmers Road Hill site into botanical gardens and parkland where local people, plants, animals, histories and culture are celebrated? Thank you.
Good, thank you. So we have Councillor Allen who's already looking for some clarification.
Yes, clarification. Thanks, Josie, for your presentation. What sort of area would you envisage, like land-wise? You're not talking the whole 67 acres?
I don't fully understand the boundaries of the land as it is, but I would want to encompass the bushland that botanist, ecologist Bill Peel planted there many years ago, not so much as a reason to preserve that bushland, but as a way of learning how the land would have behaved pre-white settlement. Because what Bill did was plant local species that are endemic to that area, and he planted very thoughtfully according to aspect and soil type. So it's a really good study area. So I'd want to preserve that. I think there's a real opportunity to link the top of the hill, which surrounds the building, with the bottom where the pool is, and there could be running tracks and walking paths and, you know, all of those things could happen.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, Tom. Please ask.
Thank you, Mayor, and thanks, Josie, for your submission. It sounds like you've done some community consultation on this concept already. Would you agree that the next sort of logical step is to do more?
Absolutely. I think if we can talk to people about it and find it that it's well supported in the population of the area, the whole Shire really. I mean, it's a magical chance to develop a botanic garden that represents our plantings, our flora of the area. It hasn't been done, that Far East. The other point here that Bill Peel pointed out to me is that the red gum grassy plains meets the dry rainforest of our region, and that's the only place, Bill tells me, in the world where that happens. There's no other point where those two communities meet, and that's there on that land, and it's a bit special, yeah. So community consultation, yes, please.
Good, and some points very well made. So thank you for your submission. And I hopefully that you may get some answers back from officers in due course, promptly.
I could, just one more side question.
Only just one.
One, little one. When I talked with RMIT about this, and I was talking because I have an association with them through another project, and I mentioned this idea, and it was suggested that it could be picked up. It's part of their agenda to do research projects of that nature, but they would want a contact person within the Shire staff, or I'm not sure what they meant, but you know, I would like to tell them that they can contact somebody.
Yes, we do have those people.
You do have
Do I
those
call them our environmental officers?
Thanks, Mayor, and if I can, through you, in this section of the agenda, we hear from our community members, and we don't respond at this time, but that doesn't mean we're not listening. We're certainly taking notes, and where possible, we'll get someone to meet with you or come back and have further discussion.
Wonderful.
So
That's really
thank
good.
you.
Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you for your time. So at this stage, we have one more speaker, and that again is Mr. Morris Borgelt. So please.
I promise not to go over time. This is about Council's Mutual Respect Charter. Surely, in a truly mutual charter, every responsibility in that charter should apply to both parties. Not one set for one party and a different set for another party, which is exactly what the Mutual Respect Charter that you guys have adopted from the Stonington Council, and it's a second-rate charter. Maybe you should get your own charter that is actually mutual. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Is there a possibility that an officer could reply to our charter? The CEO?
So, as we said, Ms Johnson is already scheduled to meet with Mr Borgelt later this week. I'm sure we can address the matter of the charter.
Good,
at the
thank
same
you. We
time.
could add that to the list as part of the discussion.
There will be no discussion later this week. I'm on holidays as of tomorrow.
Well, thank you for that advice. So we will try and find another mutual time when you are available, but we certainly will have that one-on-one meeting with you. Thank you. So we'll move on to 1.8, which is items for noting, and I believe we have none. Good, thank you. Okay, item 2 is notices of motion, and as identified in the agenda, Councillor Buckley has a notice of motion at item 2.1 relating to the formation of a local government commissioner. So I now call on Councillor Buckley to move her motion.
Thank you, Mayor. I wish to move a motion that Council seeks a report by the end of Quarter 3, 2024-25, about writing to the Federal Government in support of Rural Councils Victoria's position on formation of a local government commissioner. And the role should be mandated to operate from a rural area and have a deep connection to rural issues and community.
Thank you. So for this motion of Councillor Buckley's, do we have a seconder? Councillor Allen, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Allen.
So Councillor, now I'd invite Councillor Buckley to speak to your motion.
Thank you, Mayor. So I wish to speak passionately in support of the motion for an establishment of a federal local government commissioner, an initiative that is not only practical but critical to the future of rural councils like ours. Rural Councils Victoria, representing 33 rural councils across our state, is leading this call to ensure our communities have a fair and direct voice in Canberra. Rural councils are often left to navigate a maze of federal programs, departments and red tape without meaningful support. This Commissioner would change that. The role of the Commissioner would achieve 3 vital outcomes. Firstly, it would simplify and streamline access to federal programs and disaster recovery funding. We're all too familiar with the challenges of natural disasters here in East Gippsland, whether it's fires, floods or storms. We're often left to navigate this complex and bureaucratic nature of disaster recovery funding, which holds up crucial outcomes when our communities need swift action and betterment programs. A Commissioner would cut through this red tape, helping councils like ours achieve faster decisions and more effective response and recovery efforts. Secondly, it would give rural councils a seat at the federal table. Right now, rural voices are struggling to be heard. We represent vast regions, significant infrastructure, and the hard-working communities that drive Australia's economy. Yet we lack the resources and influences enjoyed by larger metropolitan councils. The Commissioner would work directly with councils like ours to advocate for our needs, ensuring rural councils are no longer ignored in Canberra. As Rural Councils Victoria Secretary Bradley Thomas put it, a local government commissioner will mean the door is always open. Thirdly, the Commissioner would champion regionalisation and decentralisation. Importantly, this role would be mandated to operate from a rural area, bring decision-making closer to the people it affects most. This means local voices, local partnerships and local outcomes, not decisions made from faraway cities. So, councillors, I believe we need to stand united on this issue. Supporting this motion means supporting the fair treatment and sustainable future of our rural communities. A federal local government commissioner would not only strengthen our relationship with the Commonwealth, but ensure a quick recovery, better services and stronger rural economies for generations to come. So let's add our voice to Rural Councils Victoria and advocate for this much needed role, because communities like East Gippsland deserve a champion. So thank you, and also, just a side note, I think that the federal government should be the one that pays for a local government commissioner. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Buckley. So, Councillor Allen, would you like to add to the story, please?
Thank you, Mayor. Look, just, you know, as it's a report, I was going to add that bit that Sonia just put on the end of who pays as part of the report. And I think it's very important in that report to inform us how it will work and how we'll be able to improve the access that we get to the decision makers, in this instance federally, but will that have a spill-on effect to our representation at state level? Because as rural councils, rural residents, I think we all understand that the tram tracks seem to end the vision of a lot of the government decisions.
Thank you, Councillor Allen. So, is the motion opposed? Thank you, Councillor. So, would anyone else wish to speak to the motion? Thank you, Councillor Crook.
Oh, I wonder, Mayor, is it appropriate to ask a question about the motion?
Well, I guess we didn't actually offer up because we hadn't heard the motion, so I'm thinking absolutely you could ask a question.
Thank you. I note the motion seeks a council report about writing to the federal government in support of Rural Council Victoria's existing position. I've had a quick look at Rural Council Victoria's election platform. I haven't been able to find in there whether it is in fact their policy position that the federal government pay for a commissioner, should be one, if one should be created. Just wondering if you can clarify that, Councillor Buckley, whether it is the intention of Rural Councils Victoria to have the federal government pay for the commissioner should one be created.
Thank you very much for the question, Councillor Crook. So my response to that is why I'm actually asking for a report. I think we need to flesh that out a little bit further and we can indeed contact Rural Councils Victoria to see if their policy development has further progressed, and the report that comes back to us will give us the information that you seek. But I think it's a really good, it's a really good ask. I think that should be indeed the case. I think that that will be part of the ask, certainly from our council, to support that with Rural Council's blessing, so we can seek more information.
Would certainly be my preference too.
Yeah,
thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Councillor Eastman?
Yeah, I wasn't familiar with the motion and I've had a quick look at the Rural Council's site since. Can you tell me if any of the other states have similar?
No, I can't. No, I don't have that information. Councillor Eastman.
Right, thank you.
Thank you for the question. So, another one? Yes?
No, I'm happy to speak for the motion, but you might want to check if there's no
Well,
questions.
nobody was wanting to speak against, so obviously, yes, it's time now for you to speak for.
Thanks, Mayor. Look, I think this isn't a bad idea. We're really talking about a report to Council about a policy. So in that report, officers will be able to research all the relevant information and bring that to Council for our consideration about whether it's a good idea or not. So I don't see any problem in them doing this. I think it would have been a good idea for us for me personally, maybe to have a bit of a read of that policy prior, but I haven't done that, so I'm happy to support it as it is. Thanks.
Thank you. So, councillors, after that, I think we could put this motion to the vote. All those in favour? That is unanimous. Thank you. Item 3 is about deferred business. So, Ms. CEO, do we have deferred business?
No, Mayor, we have no deferred business.
Good, thank you. And of course, item 4 is councillor and delegate reports, which I encourage councillors to submit your delegate reports to be included in the minutes to be presented at the next meeting. So now we've got item 5, which is officer reports. So we will now, the first item is 5.1.1, amended development plan, Brookfield Lakes Estate, 19 Lamandra Boulevard, Lucknow. So, Mr. Stevenson, our General Manager of Place and Community, could you please give us your report?
Thank you, Mayor. And councillors, before you is a report seeking approval to endorse amended development plan for land at 19 Lamandra Boulevard, Lucknow. The land is part of Brookfield Lakes Estate, and the amended development plan will allow for the use of and development of a residential village. The officer's recommendation is that council approves the endorsement of the amended development plan subject to conditions. Just some key points for consideration. An amendment to a development plan may be considered and approved by council to guide future development of the land. This proposed amendment is the third for this precinct, which was originally indicated as a retirement village, then a subdivision of 99 residential lots, and now a residential village. A residential village is defined in the planning scheme as land in one ownership containing a number of dwellings used to provide permanent accommodation and which includes communal, recreation or medical facilities for residents of the village. The proposal has been subject to 3 rounds of community consultation, and while there is still some community objection, officers consider the concerns have been substantially addressed through the further information and commitments provided by the applicant. On balance, the proposal is considered to be an acceptable use of the land, providing greater diversity in housing in the area with the appropriate infrastructure and access to a range of community, education, transport, health and recreation facilities within reasonable proximity. A planning permit for the development will be required, and conditions are proposed on the approval of the development plan amendment to deal with the dwelling design and performance, access, amenity and other relevant planning considerations. I'd just like to say I've also present tonight is Martin Richardson, Manager of Planning and Development, and this report is presented to you for your consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. So now I will open up for questions on this item. Councillor Allen, you're first. Councillor Crook, you may be next.
This has been a long ongoing process. Originally, there was quite a number of objections to it, and I think that number is reduced substantially over the period of time. Would you be able to enlighten us on what those numbers were, please, Martin?
Thank you, Councillor Allen. I can. So the first round of consultation that occurred, we received 140 objections. I attended a meeting at the Lucknow footy ground, and I think there were about 60 people there having a chat with me about their concerns. Generally, there was a fair bit of misunderstanding, I think, of the proposal, and we might come to that in that because of the regulatory framework whereby these villages are registered as caravan parks, there was a concern that it was a caravan park, which it is not. Under the planning scheme, it's not classified as a caravan park. That's under a separate set of regulations. There are also concerns about people's expectations because there have been changes in the development plan over time. Originally a retirement village, then a 99-lot subdivision, then a residential village. So people were quite rightly worried, how do these changes keep happening? The second round of consultation occurred after we received some further information from the applicant and distributed that, and we received 64 objections. And then finally, I think the critical issue that was addressed after the council meeting earlier in August this year was that the applicant provided designs for the dwellings, and that was really the remaining major concern of residents, was that they were concerned about the quality of design of the dwellings in the village. So once that information was distributed to the same number of people, the original 140 people, we received 12 objections. So it's fair to say that I guess some people might have just got tired of objecting, but and certainly those last 12 objections still had concerns. But our view in discussing with many of the people who made comments was that they were much happier, given that they had some assurances about the dwelling design within the village.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. I guess my question is about initially intensification. So we saw a subdivision application for 99 lots. This is for 151 individual dwellings, which I think in my mind that's a significant intensification. There's probably more hard space, more water generally running off the site. I know from walking around there that there's one main receiving waterway that I'm guessing all the stormwater will end up in. Are we satisfied that the infrastructure there that was, I'll rephrase my question, was there ever this intensification planned for this site? And are we confident that the water management infrastructure is able to cope with this new demand?
Thanks, Councillor Cook, for your question. So no, originally it wasn't contemplated for 150 dwellings, and thus the application to amend the plan is with us. The retirement village was in that order of dwellings, 140 or 150, but different arrangement in a retirement village. Often they're sort of communal sort of rooms and that sort of thing. So yeah, you're correct. This proposed amendment does present an intensification in terms of the built form and the building footprints and paved areas, etc. Obviously, a standard residential subdivision would have gardens and backyards and that sort of thing, which would help with infiltration of stormwater. Having said that, the proposal includes a stormwater management strategy, which has been provided by Crossco Engineering. That goes through some initial calculations in relation to stormwater management and discharge of stormwater from the site through those receiving wetlands, and councillors would have observed, or certainly in the existing or currently developing part of Brookfield Lakes, the stormwater management system is a series of detention basins and wetlands, etc. So the same approach would be taken here, as is current best practice. And the initial, or the stormwater management strategy indicates that that stormwater infrastructure is capable of managing the stormwater appropriately, such that the two major conditions are met, that the quantity and quality of water leaving the site is the same as or less than what enters the site. And that's the basic principle that applies. Yeah.
Thank you. Couple more, if that's okay, Mayor. Will this development be staged so that can be assessed along the way? The capacity of the water management infrastructure can be assessed at a halfway point, say, or is it all just going to, is the approval for the whole lot to go all at once as fast as they want?
So just to clarify, the approval of the amendment for the development plan doesn't give the green light for the development to proceed. A planning permit application is subsequently required. But that's an important question. So when we get into the planning permit assessment, a lot more of that detail will be worked through. And for example, a standard condition that we would put on a permit of this kind in the future will be for a construction management plan to be put in place. That will deal with construction activity, dust, all of that sort of thing. But also it is likely to be staged, and we can certainly look at putting conditions in place in relation to the monitoring of stormwater runoff as the stages develop.
Okay, thank you. And finally, unregistered movable dwellings. I've heard a few concerns around the nature of the development being akin to a caravan park. Now, we've heard from yourself this evening and Mr Stevenson that it's not a caravan park, but can you reassure me that an unregistered movable dwelling is different to a caravan?
Yes.
And maybe make some comments around the built form of the proposed development and the dwellings, because that's the other main concern I've heard from community, is that they don't want a caravan park and they're concerned around the final built product, if you like.
Thanks, Councillor Cook, for the question. And again, this was one of the major considerations that community members raised. And it is unfortunate that the confusion is created by this definition of under the caravan and camping park regulations. It's a bit of an anomaly in the system. But just to be clear, that the amended development plan allows for the development of a residential village, which is defined within the planning scheme as quite separate activity or quite separate use to a caravan park. And I suppose the standard, kind of perception of a caravan park might be some of these pretty basic cabins that get put on sites. Certainly no caravans will be enabled on this site. And the initial concern was that you could potentially bring in what used to be called park homes, I think basically something akin to a sea container really with windows. That can't happen under the proposals that have been put to us.
So no mining dongers?
No dongers, no. Okay. So councillors saw in the briefing last week some elevations and plans of the proposed dwellings. They are lightweight construction. They're easily transported and assembled on the site, but they certainly don't resemble the kind of donger or dwelling or cabin that you might see in a caravan park.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Eastman?
Just a quick one. Will this require rezoning from general residential to commercial?
No, Councillor, thanks for the question. A residential village is what's called a Section 2 use in the residential zone, so it's a use for which council may issue a permit under the zoning of residential. It's a permissible use within the residential zone, so it doesn't need a rezoning.
Sorry, clarification there. Is a caravan park residential too, is it?
A caravan park can also be considered in a residential zone, but this is not an application for a caravan park. It's an application for a residential village. Yeah.
Quite confused.
So just perhaps to maybe allay the confusion, in terms of the planning scheme, when someone applies for the use of land, the use is classified by definition within the section of the scheme and has the meanings of terms. So you can have various uses that fall under a category called accommodation. That includes dwellings, it includes caravan parks, it includes residential villages. But the specific definition within that sort of legal framework means that if we approve a residential village, we're approving a residential village, not a caravan park. And the distinction is quite clear and quite legally defined, that the approval relates only to that activity defined as a residential village. Yeah.
Good, thank you. So, Councillor Buckley, I believe you have a question?
Yes, thank you. My question relates to the intensification of the site and the traffic movements and public transport. So one of the concerns of having, those extra people living in a smaller area is how do they commute. So is there provisions with the developer, or how does it work to make sure that that's addressed?
Thanks, Councillor Buckley, for the question. So in relation to intensification and how it affects traffic, there's a couple of things to consider. There's a traffic impact assessment that accompanies the application and is in the documents that are before you. The assumption normally, and you heard this in relation to another application recently, I think the assumption normally for traffic generation from a single dwelling is 10 vehicle movements per day. That's the kind of standard engineering number that's applied to a dwelling. So 2 people in a dwelling, both going to work each day, perhaps coming home for lunch, maybe taking the kids to sport, probably adds up to 10 movements a day. The traffic impact assessment in this case, I think quite correctly points out that the residents of a lifestyle village are not likely to be families. These are 1 and 2 bedroom dwellings, and they're likely to be 2 people or 1 person per dwelling. And so therefore you would expect that there would be less vehicle movements, and many of the people in this residential village won't be commuting to work. They'll be retired or they'll be working part-time, as the case may be. So the figure that's been used in the traffic impact assessment, I tend to agree it's correct, is 6 vehicle movements per day. So when you work it out, the previous application for 99 dwellings at 10 vehicle movements per day is 990. 150 at 6 is 900. So about the same number of vehicles.
And just a supplementary question.
And sorry, the public transport question.
That's right. Yeah.
So in this case, look, I'm not absolutely sure, but I wouldn't mind hazarding a guess that there is a bus service to Brookfield Lakes, and if not, there would be planned in the future. It's probably not that regular, as is most of our bus services, unfortunately, in regional Victoria. But again, the question of public transport is really one that comes more through advocacy. So we don't have the ability when approving planning proposals to require public transport facilities to be provided. We did actually try with the Kmart to get them to pay for a bus service, and we failed miserably. So it's not possible under the planning system to require an applicant to provide a public transport service, because that's something that should be funded by a public entity. But what does happen, obviously, as these areas develop, and Brookfield Lakes is going gangbusters, if I can use that technical term at the moment, is that will likely see a growth in demand for public transport and local bus services, and the ability for council to then advocate to the state government to provide bus services to these growing residential areas.
Thank you.
Councillor Ashworth was first.
Thank you. And through you. Can I just, as a new councillor, getting my head around all this planning information, just say thank you to the teams for taking us out to the site yesterday and explaining this in, I'm going to say layman's terms, because we didn't have the background and it's been going on for quite some time. So just wanting to extend a thanks to the teams for taking us through the process, which has been long and lengthy.
To actually be politically correct, could you please ask a quick question? Something, anything.
Oh, you've put me on the spot. Can't think of one.
Good. Councillor Eastman, you can ask the question for her.
That's okay. Sorry, one last question. The common facilities and proposed lawn bowls on the site themselves with the common facilities, would it be your expectation that they should be built before the houses are built? Like with this sort of development, is there a way that they're staged so that what's being proposed is there for the people when they actually move in?
Thank you for the question. It's a good one. Normally, we would not require certain things to go first, but in this case, there's certainly the potential for us to go back to the applicant and as part of the planning permit application, when we eventually consider that, to require that some of those facilities are provided in the first stage. I note, and those councillors who may have driven past the Palm Lake Resort in Paynesville will notice that the first major piece of work there was the community facilities, and that's because that's how you market these developments. You actually provide them up front so that people can see what they're getting. So we could certainly investigate that with the applicant. We could certainly consider putting a permit condition in place in due course that requires that the facilities are built perhaps as part of the first couple of stages of the development. and that would be something that would be certainly worth discussing with the applicant. Yeah. It normally would occur that way because that's the only way you can get people to buy these things, is if they can see what they're getting. Yeah.
Councillor Farquhar.
Martin, can you just confirm that one of the main advantages of being classed as a caravan park, that the residents will be actually, they will qualify for Centrelink payments for rental assistance?
Thank you, Councillor. It sounds like you've done your homework. Yes. So yeah, the registration under the caravan park and camping regulations provides a number of benefits. Firstly, it enables agreements to be put in place about how those people will be handled and how their complaints will be managed if they've got problems with the roads not being swept or the garbage not being collected. It puts in place a framework whereby they're treated fairly as occupants of what might have been a caravan park. But yes, I do understand that it does also mean, therefore, that people are able to get rental assistance because of that registration. Yeah.
Okay, I guess I can see we've expended all the questions around this item. So, councillors, there is an officer recommendation in the report, so do I have a mover? Councillor Farquhar, Councillor Buckley, you've seconded it. So Councillor Farquhar, would you like to speak to the motion?
I don't think I need to speak. I think it's been well covered. So thank you, Martin, for a great explanation on those points, and hope to see it move forward.
Councillor Buckley?
Yes, look, I concur. However, I just think that, you know, sometimes development can be difficult and growing pains. We accept that in the community it can be fraught with the unknown, and so I want to thank the officers for going into community and explaining the processes of this development. And I think it also addresses the, you know, the need for housing. You know, we have to make these sometimes difficult decisions or bold decisions to ensure that we're going to be able to have the houses to put our people in. And so I'm happy to second the motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anyone wish to speak against the motion? Okay, I see none. Yeah, I was just getting to that actually. I was just going to say, I see none, but would anyone else like to speak to the motion? Thank you, Councillor Crook, and then Councillor Allen.
Thanks, Mayor. Look, I'll just start by acknowledging that this has been quite controversial for people in the existing Brookfield Lakes development. As we've heard tonight, there were originally well over 100 objections. I would like to think that it's not just because those objectors have been worn down by the process, that there are now only, I think, 12 remaining objectors. This residential village for 155 dwellings, I believe, will represent a different price point to the normal housing market in Bairnsdale. And I really recognise that while we have quite a lot of houses in Bairnsdale, very few of them are affordable. And I'm not suggesting that this is social or super cheap housing by any stretch, but by comparison there are other similar developments, Broadlands for example, that I believe are providing diversity of housing stock for our community, and I think on balance that provision outweighs the concerns around traffic and concerns around built form, that for example that this will be, people have used the term trailer trash and caravan parks. I've seen the designs for these buildings. They don't look like cheap, horrible mining dongers or caravans. They look like homes and houses. And if the other similar, not the same, but similar residential developments are anything to go by, this will be a good development for our town, and so I'm happy to support it.
Councillor Allen.
Yeah, thanks, Tom. You said a lot of what I was going to say, but I just want to concentrate a little bit on the process that we've been through and congratulate our planners on the way that they've navigated this. We often hear that council stands in the way and the first thing that they say is no and obstruct and et cetera, but we've ended up with, I believe, a good result, and in no small part to the work that the planners have done. So I just want to acknowledge that.
Thank you. Any more councillors wishing to speak? Okay. Oh, yes, we do. You wish to speak?
I do, but I'm still not sure about whether I can vote for the development. I'm hearing everything people say, but I'm still quite uncertain. For instance, I did not know that an address in this place being a caravan park makes it easier for Centrelink payments. Like, there's a whole lot of different things, concerns I have about the way this development has been put forward. As you know, the movable dwellings and all that. So I'm just putting it out there that I would like to see us have a policy about this sort of thing in future, rather than feeling like I'm being pushed into a position where I don't really understand it well enough and I'm not really comfortable.
Okay, I do understand that, but the actual, is it, were you speaking for or against? Because that's the stage we're at in the debate is...
well, no one's actually put a motion against, you just asked him.
Yes, I did ask.
No, did anyone say they were against it?
No, no one
I
did.
thought you just wanted to ask if people wanted to have something to say about it. I didn't put a motion against it.
It was either now to speak for this motion because nobody wished to speak against. So are you speaking for the motion or are you seeking clarification?
I'm not quite sure. I'm just saying that I don't think I'll be voting for it, that's all.
If I may, Mayor, we might just take that as a comment and recognising that some of our councillors are new to the issue and to the process, we take your comments on board and take it as a comment rather than speaking for or against the motion. Thank you.
So if we are done with speaking for or against, I would like to put this to the vote. So all those in favour? Those against? Okay, we have 8 for and 1 against. So that would be noted in the minutes. Thank you, officers. Our next item, Kate's ready, set, go, is our planning permit application for a 2-lot subdivision and redevelopment of a second dwelling at 34 to 36 8th Avenue, Raymond Island. And before the report is presented, I will ask Ms Kate Young to speak to the item. Ms Young, please come forward, as you have.
Thank you.
And we will allow you 5 minutes to speak. Thank you.
Well, and I will stay inside my 5 minutes, Mr Mayor. So I'd like to firstly...
we'll be on to that. We can... but the time has started, so please, quick.
Well, firstly, I'd just like to congratulate all councillors on their appointment for this term. It's very encouraging to see a tricky matter like this raised so early in your term. Often the planning officers try and ease you into the role, but this is, you're in the deep end, pardon the pun. But it does indicate that you're taking the issue of preserving our coastal communities very seriously, and that's a very important issue. I've had the opportunity to present to the returning councillors twice before on this matter previously, so I don't wish to waste your valuable time by repeating myself, but I do think it's important to emphasise the sole reason that this application was refused was due to the inability to drive a car off Raymond Island. Now, I'm sure all of you as good representatives of East Gippsland know you can't drive a car off Raymond Island, you're reliant on the ferry. For this particular 2-lot subdivision, there is no risk of flooding on the land. Protection from bushfire can be achieved. The CFA did not object to this proposal. No surrounding owners objected. The proposal is entirely consistent with state and local planning policy, as the officer's report concluded. It is only the inability to provide flood-free egress from the site that was the reason for refusal here. So Raymond Islanders, they are very understanding of flooding, and they know there are times where they cannot rely on the ferry, and that could be because of a planned outage, of a failure. I think it was last year that the chain snapped mid-channel, and these sorts of things happen on the island, and there are plans in place to know how we adapt to that. So we say, on balance, that the addition of one single 1-bedroom dwelling will not result in an unacceptable risk. So the officer's report that's in today's agenda provides 2 distinct options for how council may wish to proceed with this matter, now that our client has sought to appeal the decision made by the previous council. And we'd like to strongly encourage council to take up the second of those options and empower your officers to present an alternate view to VCAT. One approach to this second option may be for all parties to seek a VCAT order which would remit this matter back to Council for another determination. It's our view, and I'm sure one that you all share, that decisions made about East Gippsland are best made in East Gippsland, not in King Street in Melbourne. So thank you for the opportunity to submit this evening, and I'd like to wish you all a very happy and safe Christmas.
Thank you. Thank you, Kate. So now I'd ask Mr Stevenson, our General Manager of Place and Community, to please present this report.
Thank you, Mayor. Before you, councillors, is a report regarding a planning permit application for a two-lot subdivision.
Excuse me, Chris, I might just stop you and get you to turn the microphone on.
It is.
Oh, it is? Sorry.
Yeah.
My apologies. My apologies.
Do you want me to? I'll use another one. Dodgy. I'll start from the top. So thank you, Mayor. Before you, councillors, is a report regarding a planning permit application for a two-lot subdivision and development of a second dwelling at 34 to 36 8th Avenue, Raymond Island. The matter is brought to Council to seek confirmation of a previous decision by Council on the 6th of August 2024 to refuse the application. Key points for your consideration are: the applicant has sought review of Council's decision at VCAT, and a compulsory conference is scheduled for the 15th of January 2025. Unless directed otherwise by Council, officers will present that case to refuse the application. The sole reason for refusal relates to planning policy considerations raised in an objection from the East Gippsland Catchment Management Authority in relation to the risks associated with egress from the site in the event of inundation. There is a potential policy conflict in that the planning scheme supports infill development in existing residential areas, and it is arguable that there is a relatively low risk with negligible increase in overall risk for the community. However, the state and local policy does include objectives to avoid development in areas of flood risk, including the risks associated with safe egress. There are broader implications for area in other parts of the Shire where flood events may prevent egress by the community to other locations. The officer's recommendation remains as refusal. However, given the upcoming VCAT process and the election of a new council, it is prudent for council to reconsider this matter. If council reaffirms the original decision, that position will be pursued at VCAT. If council chooses to pass an alternative motion to support the application, it cannot issue a new notice of decision, but can direct officers to request that VCAT remits the matter for a formal decision under the Act, or to represent a position of support should the matter continue to a full hearing. Obviously, Martin's still with us here, and the report is presented to you for your consideration.
Thank you for that report. So, councillors, questions of officers, please. Councillor Crook.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, officers, for the report. I've got a number of questions. I'm a little bit confused about this. I'm hoping you can help me understand. We've issued a notice of decision to refuse a permit for this application. That's correct?
That's correct, Councillor Cook.
Okay, thanks. So who's the responsible authority for this planning permit application at this point in the process then?
Effectively, now that it has gone to VCAT, VCAT is the responsible authority.
Right, so we've issued a refusal, it's been appealed, it's gone to VCAT, who now, as they say, stand in our shoes to make the decision. So what's our role in the process now then?
Thanks, Councillor Cook. So our role is to attend VCAT. We're required to attend. The council's role as the responsible authority, in terms of its determination, is to present the case that the council wishes to pursue at VCAT. And obviously, in this case, the appellant, or what's referred to as the applicant for review, let's call them the applicant, will obviously present a case to suggest that VCAT should issue a permit for the use. Our role under the current decision-making, the decision that's been made, would be to defend the council's refusal of the application. I will add that at times in VCAT, but certainly in the initial hearings, parties are asked whether or not there's the opportunity for agreement. In a case where there is a refusal and the grounds are strong and the position is strong, then usually our position is no, we don't see that there's much opportunity for agreement. Sometimes, in many cases actually, there are opportunities to discuss conditions of approval that might address concerns about an application, or might actually lead to the VCAT member suggesting certain negotiations occur to try to resolve it. But our position, our role, the officer's role under the council's delegation is to represent the council's position, the council's adopted position.
Okay, and just bear with me while I seek to understand this. So do we have the legal ability to change the decision that currently stands, notice of decision to refuse a planning permit?
Not at this stage. So as you would be aware, councillor, the rescission of the motion is not possible because that's got a 3-day limit. So once the motion is passed and the cooling off period occurs, then that motion can't be rescinded. In terms of the determination under the Act, the council has made the determination, and so we can't make another one. However, if the application was remitted by VCAT to council, then that remittal of the application to council enables the council to make a further notice of determination under the instructions of VCAT.
Okay, so just hypothetically, if council was to resolve, the new council was to resolve a position that, a view that was in favour of the permit to be granted, am I right in thinking then that the VCAT member would have, here's the previous council's decision that's been through the process, and here's the new council's view, because it's not a decision, it's just a view about the application, and I'm the VCAT member, and these, sorry Joanne, and these two things are, well, let's just say opposite sides of two coins. Is that just the VCAT member's hard job to try and navigate that, or is it likely that the VCAT member is going to be somewhat confused because the same institution, i.e. the Gippsland Shire Council, is effectively asking for two very different things?
Thanks, councillor. Very hypothetical. I feel a mock VCAT hearing coming on our councillor briefing.
But I ask because I feel that it is likely.
So it's a bit hypothetical, so I obviously wouldn't put myself in the shoes of a VCAT member. I've often predicted the outcome and almost always been wrong. So we don't try to predict that. But I will say this. The VCAT member has to consider the matter afresh. So whilst we provide all of the papers and referral responses and the council reports and things, they're not sitting there looking at the council decision and going, I'll forensically examine this condition. They sort of put that over there and they say, let's pretend that I'm the council and I want to hear all the points of view and I'm going to make a decision. So again, they often explain that their job is not to rip apart the council's decision, it's to say, I am now sitting as a position of council and we've got a blank slate and I'm going to hear people's points of view based on the submissions that they've made. My understanding would be this, that if we went to VCAT member with a position which was different to the previous position, the VCAT member would say, okay, if I remit this to the council, they will make a formal decision under the Act. We do a council report, it would go on the agenda, you'd debate it. And therefore they have the opportunity to reconsider their position as a responsible authority. If that decision was to approve the application, then there is the potential for the objecting referral authority to then appeal that decision. So if I were the VCAT member, I would say there's an opportunity for due process to occur here, and they may take that.
Okay, thanks. That's really helped my understanding of the process. Just one final one for now. I should probably have forewarned you on this because I'm going to ask something about the local planning policy. So on page 184 of our council agenda, it states that the notice of decision to refuse a permit by the previous council may have substantial impact on the achievement of local planning policy. I'm not sure who wrote that, and that doesn't matter. So I've looked at the local planning policy, and it actually seems, well, for me, fairly unambiguous when it comes to land subject to inundation, what they refer to as the LSI overlay, which is land that not subject of the application, but the egress to which the application's refusal pertained. So I wonder if you could, I've written here, could you take us to the planning policy, but maybe that's a bit of a tall order in a council meeting. So maybe you could just identify what part of the local planning policy is going to be substantially impacted by the decision to refuse the proposal, because when I go to section 1303L1, policy application, policy applies to land within the subject land to inundation overlays. The primary strategy there says direct use and development to locations that minimise its vulnerability to the threat of floods. That seems pretty clear to me. What am I not understanding?
So far you're on track, Councillor Crook. Did I just call you Councillor Chook? My apologies.
You did, but that's okay.
On track, Councillor Crook. So there's a number of places in the planning policy. You've got it right there. 1301 refers to climate change impacts. 1301(1)(s), which is state policy, refers to natural hazards and climate change. 1301(2)(s) relates to coastal inundation and erosion. And there's a fair bit in there in decision guidelines and strategies around, particularly that one about avoiding development within areas of risk.
Yeah, it took me quite a while to read it. There's a lot in there, but I can't see where this...
There are other bits and pieces in there as well that relate to safety and amenity. You know, people should live in safer places and people should have the amenity to be able to feel safe, that sort of thing. But that's the primary area that you're referring to, and that's the one that we were referring to in the original report. The balancing act is that there are other parts of planning policy that say we should be allowing subdivision within existing settlements. The other parts of planning policy that say that we should be avoiding the development in remote areas that aren't serviced, and we should be putting development where there is infrastructure like roads and water and sewerage, etc. And other parts of planning policy, or soon to be planning policy, that say that we should actually look to intensify, and in fact there's current planning policy that says we should look to intensify development within residential areas for that reason that I just mentioned, because it's a good way to get use of existing infrastructure. So we have competing policy interests. It's correct, as the report states, that the approval of the application can be seen to be directly in contravention of significant elements of planning policy. There would be other arguments that could be mounted, and I'm sure the applicant will mount them in VCAT, to say that there are parts of the planning policy that say that it's a good idea to re-subdivide vacant lots within existing residential areas, and that's the balancing act in terms of competing policy interests.
And my final question for now. But the view of the planning team at East Gippsland Shire is that the decision should be upheld and that the application is in fact inconsistent with the policy planning framework.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Has anyone else got questions of officers? Right.
It's probably coming from a position of ignorance, but when I read the motion from the last meeting, the July meeting, is that motion actually says that this wasn't approved then, this application, is that right?
That's correct, the council decision at that meeting. I think it took a couple of meetings to get to it.
So you were for the development at the last meeting?
No, the council resolved not to issue a permit, so to refuse the application.
Okay, I'm looking at this motion here on page 195.
So there was
motion that was presented at the time.
Oh, right.
There was first a motion at the first meeting which lapsed, I believe. So the motion was moved to endorse council officer's recommendation, and it was not supported. And then there was no alternative motion put. And then at the following meeting, a motion was put, the recommendation was put to refuse the application, and that was supported by a majority of councils and adopted as a council resolution to refuse. Yeah.
It's just a bit confusing the way that's written. But the other question, and I asked it today, but just clarifying again, if someone wants to resubmit an application, when can they do it, and why couldn't that have been done this time?
So people are able, thanks councillor for the question, people are able to resubmit an application without change as soon as a decision is made. If council refuses an application, someone has the opportunity, if they wish, to resubmit the application straight away. But the process is, and quite rightly so, that the best way to seek redress is to appeal to VCAT, because resubmitting an application in most cases would result in the same decision. So the process under the Act is that if an applicant is unhappy with a council decision, rather than ask them to make a decision again, you go to VCAT and seek a different decision. Yeah.
Okay, well, there is a recommendation in the report, so...
Yep, I'm happy to move that.
Sorry, Mayor, can I just seek clarification of when it's the right time to foreshadow an alternative motion?
Could we ask governance, please?
You can foreshadow it at any time, but because the motion has been moved, the next part of the process is to see if there's a seconder for the motion. If there is no seconder, that motion elapses, and then you can foreshadow or you can move a motion then. If the motion gets a seconder, then it goes through a process of being voted on, or there can be a movement to amend the motion. So, but because we've got a mover of this motion, the next step is to seek a seconder for that motion.
I've just moved a motion, the officer's recommendation.
Okay, so we have Councillor Crook has moved it. Do we have a seconder to Councillor Crook's motion? So you wish to second? Okay, we have a seconder.
Very good. I'm happy to speak to the motion. If that's okay with you, Mayor?
It's okay.
Yes?
Pardon?
Mayor, is that's
I did say
good to
yes.
speak to the motion? Sorry, I missed that. Councillors, the strategic objective, one of the strategic objectives in our existing council plan, and I think you'll find this is woven through all of the Land and Environment Act and the policy planning framework, but reflected in our own council plans in strategic objective 2.1, is that statutory and strategic planning for land use delivers sustainable outcomes that balance the need for growth with the enhancement of our lifestyle, character, the built and natural environment. This application is inconsistent with the requirements and objectives of the East Gippsland planning scheme. The proposal is generally inconsistent with the policy planning framework with respect to planning for places and environmental risks and amenity. The proposal is generally inconsistent with the objectives of Clause 4404, land subject to the inundation overlay, and Clause 3, the proposal is inconsistent with the decision guidelines in the Victorian Planning Provisions Policy Planning Practice Note, PPN 11, applying for a planning permit under the flood provisions, in that it's not consistent with the planning policy framework. It relies on low-level access to and from the site. It is likely to increase the burden on emergency services and the risk to emergency personnel, and it is likely to increase the amount of flood damage to public and private assets. Councillors, the previous council made the right decision in determining that this planning application should not be approved. The applicant has every right to take the matter to VCAT, but for our council to now turn around and try and claw back that decision, you simply can't put the toothpaste back in the tube once it's all been squeezed out. And we may choose to try and take a different view, but I fear that that is not going to be well received. And whether it is or not, I believe the previous decision of council should be upheld for the reasons that I've stated, and I support the officers in their recommendation to uphold the refusal. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Crook. Now, Councillor Travascus, you seconded the motion. Would you wish to speak to it? Okay, no. All right, so that brings us to the point, do any councillors here wish to speak against? Well, it's for and against, but usually those against get to speak first. Okay, Councillor Buckley.
So I'll take a different approach, and I thank Councillor Crook for his position, and I acknowledge the positions of the officers as well. The reason why I will speak against the motion as it stands is that I believe what this is in fact achieving into the future is putting a roadblock for those people who have other blocks on Raymond Island who wish to develop them. by setting a precedent. And I think that affects their as-of rights. I think it affects the island itself. And I believe that it was just on a recommendation, which is only a recommendation, based on modelling that's a future, perhaps, that may affect this particular development. So I can't support this recommendation, and as I've stated before, I will foreshadow an alternate motion that will give a clearer representation, perhaps, of how the councillor group feels. Thank you.
So anyone else wish to speak for or against? Say no. Now, Councillor Buckley has foreshadowed an alternative motion. Are we in it?
We still have to vote on this.
So we want to vote on this first?
Yes.
Good. Okay, thank you. I just needed the clarification. Councillor Crook, you have a right to reply.
Yes, thank you. Look, a notice of decision to refuse this permit has already been issued. This council does not actually have the capacity to revoke that previous determination. While we may see fit to form a view that that was the wrong determination, it is based on expert evidence. It is based on the recommendations of our own planning team. It is based on the best available climate science. So if people choose to take a different view, contrary to all the evidence from the experts, that is absolutely their right. But it does not change the fact that council's fulfilled its statutory obligations in making a decision on the permit and the application under the Land and Environment Act. VCAT now stand in our shoes as the responsible authority. VCAT are now the decision makers, and we cannot rake back or put that toothpaste back in the tube. Local council planning policy supports the refusal of this application, and I'm very concerned that if we act contrary to that advice, that this would represent a significant departure from the existing defined statutory processes that are couched by the Land and Environment Act. So I urge councillors to support this decision.
Councillors, I'll put this motion to the vote. All those in favour? Okay, so we have 3 for. All those against? We have 5 against, so the motion is defeated. So, Ms CEO, does that bring us to the alternative motion at this stage of Councillor Buckley's? So you have moved an alternative motion. She gets to... So we'll call for that alternative motion, please.
Yes, thank you, Mayor, and through you.
Will we see it on the screen or not?
The councillor has to move it.
Right.
Good.
Yes, so I'd like to move the alternate motion. I think the recommendation is option 2. So if we could see the alternate motion brought to the screen, that would be appreciated. That Council 1 receives and notes the report and all attachments pertaining to this report. 2, directs officers to A, request the Victorian Civil and Administrative Tribunal VCAT to remit planning application 5.2023.454.1 to Council to enable further consideration and determination of the application, or, if that is not supported by VCAT, and B, seek a negotiated outcome as part of the VCAT appeal process to approve planning application 5.2023.454.1, semicolon. 3, notes that this alternate outcome is based on the potential impact of the refusal of the planning application on the ability for Council to implement its local planning policy to deliver housing, supply and sustainable growth of settlements across East Gippsland, and 4, requires that any negotiated outcome be subject to the following planning permit conditions endorsed plans. 1, at all times that the permit allows must be carried out generally in accordance with the requirements of any document approved under the permit to the satisfaction of the responsible authority, unless with the written consent of the responsible authority. Is there more to that? That's all I can
Councillors,
see.
there is a lot more to that, but they are standard conditions, and I wonder, CEO, whether they need to be read out. Or
Do I really need to read all that out, CEO? No, thank you very much. That's great.
Okay, good. But certainly it will be minuted, so
And we'll take that as noted.
It will be in the documents. So now I'd ask if there is a seconder to this alternative motion. Councillor Farquhar. So we'll come back to you to speak to it.
Look, councillors, and I do acknowledge that we have new councillors sitting around the table that weren't here in the last councillor group. It was a very contested vote in the last. It was only just a casting vote. So it was a close call last time. I think we've made the right decision this time. I think that if we go forward, I would hope to think that we make the right decision in this space this evening. And the reason...
Sorry, Mayor, point of order there.
Yes.
What is your point of order?
Just to clarify, the council is not making a decision on this application.
Thank you for...
Fine.
Yes,
Duly
I
noted.
concur, and I concur. Yes, but I think allowing to move forward in this space, yes, we may be setting a different precedent by letting it taking its natural course in VCAT, but I think that's the right place for it to happen. And so I put it to councillors to support our alternate motion, and I'll just leave it at that. I think it's pretty self-explanatory.
Thank you, Councillor. Now, Councillor Farquhar, you seconded it, so would you like to speak to it?
Thank you, Mayor. I think just looking at the address and the surrounding housing that's already there, the inundation that has been duly noted by the CMA, you can't take into account what it's going to do for that particular property without taking into account the properties around it. So I think the precedent that was set, I don't agree with, and I think that given the location of where it is, in amongst all that other housing, that I'll be definitely endorsing Councillor Buckley.
Good, thank you. So I would suggest that we now have anyone who wishes to speak against, and then those who wish to speak for or against. So, Councillor Crook.
Thank you, Mayor. It was pleasing to hear Councillor Buckley say that she believes the best place for this decision to be made is in VCAT. I couldn't agree more. Unfortunately, that's not part of what the motion that she moved seeks to direct VCAT to do, which is to remit the decision back to Council. So that's left me a little confused, but I certainly concur. The best place for that decision is in VCAT. Now, councillors, we are required. It is a statutory requirement. You will see it in all the council planning documents you will ever read, that we are required to make decisions around net community benefit. And I take your point, Bernie, that you might think, oh, it's just one more house or one more dwelling, and, well, you'd be right. But that's putting one more house or one more dwelling at risk. It's putting one more house or one more dwellings worth of people in the hands of the SES when Raymond Island floods, and we all know Raymond Island floods, and we all know it's going to flood more into the future. You only have to look at the CSIRO report to know that. So when that happens, and the SES get called to Raymond Island to rescue that person having a heart attack, and they can't get there, and they have to fly the only helicopter they've got in there to get to that person, they're not going to be flying somewhere else to rescue someone else. That, councillors, is not net community benefit, and I ask you to vote against this motion accordingly. Thank you.
So would anyone else like to speak for or against? I see nobody, so I guess that puts us...
No right of reply.
Oh, sorry, yes, of course you do.
Thank you, Mayor. So, thank you, Councillor Crook. Yes, I do believe that there is process and VCAT will take part of that process, but I think that this recommendation is the right direction for VCAT, and I think it's the right direction for the residents of Raymond Island, who we love, care and respect all the residents there. We care and respect for people who own vacant blocks on Raymond Island and their right, and as of rights when they bought their properties, to be able to develop them. So I think this is, as a council, sometimes we have to stand bravely against some recommendations of other government authorities when we see fit. So I thank you for your response. I know you're passionate about it, and I also thank other councillors for their understanding in what is a difficult matter. Thank you, Mayor.
Good. Thank you, Councillor Buckley. So now we can put this to the vote. So all those in favour of Councillor Buckley's alternative motion? Thank you. Those against? So the motion is carried 7-2. Thank you, officers. Thank you very much.
Yeah, what was Councillor Eastman's? Did she abstain?
No, she voted for.
She voted for. Okay.
Yes, it was only Tom. Yes, it was only Tom and Councillor Ashworth against. So our next item. Councillors, please. Order, please, councillors. We'd like to move forward. 5.2.1 is a contract 2025-1690 flood remediation construction works, Livingston Park, Omeo. And Mr McConnell, our General Manager of Assets and Environment, would like to present the report, but I also like to point out that I'm pretty sure we have... Sarah has left.
Yes.
Yes. So yes. She declared a conflict of interest and now left the room. So please, Mr McConnell, would you like to present your report?
Thank you, Mayor. Councillors, before you is a report recommending the awarding of the contract for flood remediation works in Livingston Park in Omeo. The purpose of this work is really to reduce flood damage and the risk of flood damage, whilst continuing to safeguard the future use of Livingston Park and its cultural and environmental assets, including Livingston Creek, which is the focus for that park. The work involves targeted earthworks and vegetation restoration and the installation of 3 rock chutes to really manage floodwaters as they flow through that area and make sure that they're directed in appropriate locations and that the impacts of the floodwaters, they're slowed down and the impacts are reduced. This work's been stepped through with some specialist hydraulic consultants to give advice about what's required in relation to the flood mitigation works. And that's really reinforced that without these measures, Livingston Park will continue to deteriorate from further flood events that occur. And for those who know the catchment, it's a steep catchment, it floods quickly. Further, the North East Catchment Management Authority has also indicated they don't support intensified use of Livingston Park in a lot of ways, which is an important driver for making sure that the floodworks are undertaken. As part of this, it was necessary for us to make some changes to what was originally proposed. So originally there was a master plan in place for the whole of Livingston Park. As we stepped through those issues with the CMA and others, this issue of flood mitigation became the critical issue. And so we renegotiated with Emergency Recovery Victoria for the use of the grants that was going to go to other master plan works within the Livingston Park to be used for this purpose, because that was the highest priority. So I think I would just also like to acknowledge the funding support of Emergency Recovery Victoria in that. So again, you've got before you a report that outlines the nature of the works. Also before you is the confidential tender evaluation report, making a recommendation into the preferred tenderer. And again, just a reminder, the contents of that report are confidential. If you want to discuss those, we can move that into confidential, but if there's questions generally about the work, happy to receive those.
Good, thank you, Mr McConnell, and thank you for also reminding the councillors that we have a crossover point here, that we can speak to what's in the public arena, but certainly stay away from the confidential part of the document. So, Councillor Crook, you'd like to ask a question?
I would, thanks, and I won't talk about the tender evaluation process or the costs associated, so understood. Thanks for the report. I understand is it 3 main rock chutes? And the one furthest upstream actually sits hard up against what locals know as the swimming pool. That's right, swimming pool? Am I right in understanding the development will be firstly staged, so we'll do the bottom rock chutes first, but more importantly, and this is a concern we've heard from community, that swimming pool, the work around the swimming pool won't actually disrupt the water level, that will actually be retained throughout the development and post-development.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Crook. Probably importantly, as part of this, what I've outlined here, and this particular contract relates to stage 1 of the works.
It's just stage 1. No,
and there is a stage 2 to follow, which is ostensibly focused on repairing the spillway or replacing the spillway of what's known as the swimming pool. It's not a swimming pool,
well, it is a pool that's swum in.
Dam in the river. Sure. There is a second stage of work to be done as part of that, and certainly as you indicate, it's really important to recognise, one, the value of the pool from local social perspective, but also the importance of maintaining the pool at its current level for other cultural and environmental reasons.
Thanks. Just one supplementary, if that's all right. So I've been to where this work is planned just the other week at the opening of the mountain bike park, and I've actually been there previously when there's been a fair bit of rain around, and I've seen the damage that's been caused by the creek to the land particularly next to the pump track. It's a bit of an open-ended question that I could probably answer myself, but just to be, so I feel reassured. The consultants we've got are pretty experienced. They've come up with a series of designs here. I know that there's been ongoing work over a long period of time to kind of try and stabilise the land around Livingston Park there, because it's such an important community asset. Are we confident that this is going to solve some of those major erosion issues around the pump track?
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Crook. And certainly that is one of the things that it's designed to address, is to manage the flows, to slow them where they need to be slowed, and to direct them in places. So, as you rightly say, we've gone to quite an experienced hydraulic consulting company. They've given us advice. The CMA has also been involved all the way along, and so it is important that works are undertaken. The expectation is that will then result in less damage during future flood events. And for those councillors who are newer to the table, certainly there was a flood event a couple of years back which resulted in a fair bit of erosion and damage right up in and around the pump track, not necessarily inside it, but it was a reminder about the importance of this work.
One final question. Maybe it's just something that I'll note for the public's benefit, that the part of the design process here in the hydraulic modelling that's been completed, we heard reference to modelling in a former matter for our consideration this evening. The modelling for this completed design for Livingston Park has actually been for a 1 in 50 year flood event, and the rock chutes have been designed accordingly. That's correct, isn't it? Yep. So we're relying on that modelling.
Yep.
Not even for a 1 in 100, only a 1 in 50. Okay, thanks very much.
Councillor Buckley.
Yeah, look, thank you very much. So, firstly, we're being reassured that the swimming pool will always remain at a high level so people can swim.
That's what the design basis is, Councillor Buckley. Yep.
Right, good. Secondly, there's some information in this report that states that there will be several trees removed. So are they large trees, or are they ones that can you explain in the design what that will mean and what impact?
Yeah, so thanks, Councillor Buckley. There are 3 trees that need to be removed in order to install some of the rock shoots, and we have looked at how the directions, etc., could be adjusted so that was not the case, but there is still a need to remove a couple of those trees, and they're as you know, in the particularly say surrounding the car park area, there's quite a number of large trees in that area providing shade, etc., and it is a couple of those trees which need to be removed, particularly I suppose it's in the corner closest to the swimming pool.
Yeah, that's those nice big ones. Yeah. So that will probably cause a little bit of public concern. Those trees, when they're removed, will they be cut up and supplied to the elderly in the community for firewood?
Thanks, Councillor Buckley. At this point in time, I don't have a specific plan, but I can take that suggestion on notice.
I think that would be a good gesture if it can't be, if it's not, if we can't avoid it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Was that...
and just one further question, Mayor, if I may. Has there been any community consultation with this process?
Thanks, Councillor Buckley. So there has been over a number of years, significant discussion around the project. And certainly dating back to 2022, there was work done then. There's been information on our Your Say page, etc., that sets out some of that community consultation that's been undertaken.
So community are aware that this process will be happening if we do vote this forward. There has been some sort of notification or discussion in the community. Is that?
Yeah. So our understanding is people who've been involved and are interested in the things happening around Livingston Park are aware of the project and what it involves. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Buckley. So, Councillor Eastman.
Thank you, Mayor. Just to follow on from Councillor Buckley's question regarding community consultation, will you be taking into account local knowledge before you actually go ahead with this plan? Because quite often we see a plan developed by people who aren't local and don't really understand the landscape, and it can go quite wrong if they don't really have the deep local knowledge of what actually happens during these times.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Eastman. So we're at the point now where the project has been designed and it's gone to tender, and so we have a design. We've been through a process of engaging local people to get their feedback on the design and so on. So in a sense, we've had that opportunity. Whether we've gathered through that every single piece of local knowledge, can't guarantee that, but we've tried to give that opportunity for that feedback.
Thank you.
Good, thank you. No more questions, councillors. So we have a motion before us. So Councillor Buckley has moved that. As seconder is Councillor Crook. Thank you. So would you like to speak to this motion?
Yeah, look, it's everyone loves this area in Omeo, and we come as far as Benambra even to swim in the pool. I think that we need to mitigate further works, because every time it floods, we have to redo that park area. So, we have to address it to stop it from happening. So,
May I interrupt, please?
Oh, sorry.
What
have I done wrong?
No, you didn't. I did.
Okay.
I fess up. Yes, we need to fill in the blanks first.
Oh, okay. Oh, Christmas is coming, isn't it lovely? We're all a little bit fatigued. The council accepts the tender submitted by I don't have it in front of me. What page are we on? Thank you. Did everyone hear that?
Perhaps we should...
Thank you. Bear with me, councillors, for one moment.
You've moved it, so really we need to hear it from you.
Yes, yeah, I'm aware. That the tender submitted by GF and AM Peterson, I should have known that, Proprietary Limited, ATF, GF and AM Peterson Family Trust as dinner plane services for CON 2025-1690 flood remediation construction works at Livingston Park, Omeo, for the tendered lump sum price of $964,079 is 0.04, excluding GST as provided at Apex 1 to be accepted. Yep. And 2, authorises the Chief Executive Officer or delegate to finalise the terms and to sign the contract in the form of proposed. And 3, resolves that confidential attachment 1 to this report and all discussions relating to the attachment remain confidential.
Thank you, Councillor Buckley. Now, can you remember what you got up to before I cut you short?
To speak to it. Yeah, look, just basically and quickly that it's really important that we do these works because what it will be a cost saving to the council into the future, because every time it floods we have to go back and spend more money cleaning up that area. This should mitigate that. So I certainly support this as a solution. I trust the officers when they've said they've spoken to locals about the lay of the land and that community has been consulted, and I certainly know that the contractor that has the successful tender is a local and really is a great operator. So I trust that we're in good hands there, and I really look forward to this next further step for Omeo and for that wonderful bike park, because it's, as I keep saying, the jewel in the crown of the high country, and we need to continue to support the Omeo district and all of its people. So I certainly hope. Look, it's a little bit of a loss, the trees there. We love a couple of those big trees, but I'm hoping that we can make sure that that firewood goes to local people to keep the elderly warm in the winters. So I hope that I will get support around the table. Thank you, councillors.
Councillor Crook, you seconded it. Would you like to speak?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Look, it is a shame those trees have to go. The trees just upstream are much bigger, so I'm glad to see that they will be retained. This is important flood damage mitigation work for Livingston Park. We know that, while it's not a huge catchment, it certainly gets some pretty heavy dumps of rain. The water comes up fast, it goes down fast, and it does a lot of damage. I was there after a flood not that long ago, and it was a huge mess. So hopefully these works go to mitigating the impacts of future floods and of course protect that oh so valuable asset that is the Omeo Mountain Bike Park. So I have no hesitation in supporting this motion.
Thank you. So is the motion opposed? I see nobody. Anyone else wish to speak for it? Okay, well, I'll put this motion to the vote. All those in favour? This is carried unanimously. Thank you, officers. So we now move to 5.2.2. This is CON 2024-1630R, preparation of functional design for public drainage assets, Lakes Entrance, Northern Growth Area. So welcome back to the chamber, Ms Johnson, and Mr McConnell, would you please present this report?
Thank you, Mayor. And councillors, firstly, I just was remiss earlier in just not introducing Renee Wicks, who's here as our Manager of Infrastructure Projects, and Renee can assist if there's any particular questions of detail that you have. So before you is a report on, for the function, seeking to award a contract for the functional design of drainage assets, broadly linked with the Lakes Entrance Northern Growth Area. So those who know Lakes Entrance know that the area downstream of what's referred to as the northern Lakes Entrance Northern Growth Area is an area that's subject to flooding in around the Aquadome and those surrounding areas of that in that part of Lakes Entrance. What this contract for is for the design of three assets. Firstly, a significant wetland that's proposed near the Aquadome to treat stormwater coming out of those catchments and to not only retain it, so to reduce flooding risk, etc., but also to treat the quality and remove pollutants. And so really critical in terms of protecting the health of the Gippsland Lakes as we continue to develop in this area. Two other assets are also proposed to be modified, and the design includes those to again help to retain and manage stormwater flows to reduce flooding risks in that area. So these assets are primarily looking to address the flows from existing areas of development that surround the Lakes Entrance Northern Growth Area, but as we've stepped through planning for that Lakes Entrance Northern Growth Area, it's been apparent that we need to address these issues, including the areas such as the existing Marienbauer estate. So before you is a report recommending the appointment of a consultant to undertake this design work, and then following that, obviously, councillors will come back to you to have a discussion once the design work is complete in terms of the next steps towards creating these assets in the future. So again, you've got the tender evaluation panel report before you, again, confidential, so just if you have any questions of detail in that, we'll need to move into the confidential part of the meeting. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr McConnell. So councillors, anybody got questions for this project? Thank you, Councillor Crook.
Thank you, Mayor, and it's a little remiss of me, councillors, to have not been to the site to look for myself. But I just wonder if you could clarify for me, please, Stuart, what are the existing drainage assets there? Or
So,
are there none?
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Crook. So, and I would note a number of the councillors were part of the site visit yesterday where we got that chance to go and look and see these areas. So there is two drainage assets within the gully, essentially upstream from where the mobile service station there is on the Princes Highway.
Mm-hmm.
Those assets need to be, the design and arrangement, how they function needs to be improved, and that will help to manage some of those flows down from the Marienbauer estate, which again impact on that same area around the Aquadome, etc. So that's the two existing, and the main asset that we're looking to look at through this design, which includes the treatment capacity, not just the retention capacity, is the one proposed to be located near the Aquadome, which is currently a pretty low-lying swampy area as it stands, but it is to formalise that into a wetland that can both retain flows as well as treat and remove pollutants.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? I see none. So, okay, we have Councillor Allen's jumped in early and wishes to move. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Crook, thank you. So, what we do now, I think, is we have to populate. Go forward and populate the screen.
Thank you, Mayor. So I'd like to move that we accept the tender submitted by Stantec Australia Proprietary Limited for CON 2024-1630R, preparation of detailed design for public drainage areas, Lakes Entrance Northern Growth Area for the revised tender lump sum price of $440,388.00 ex-GST as provided by Appendix 1 be accepted. Then to authorise the Chief Executive Officer or delegate to finalise the terms and to sign the contract in the form proposed, and resolves that all confidential attachments 1 and all discussions regarding this attachment remain confidential.
Councillor Allen, can you confirm that the information on the screen is as you read it?
I believe so. Thank you.
Thank you. So I've already got ahead of the game and asked for a seconder, which I'll confirm again as Councillor Crook. So, Councillor Allen, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Mayor. Look, this is a vital project for the development of the northern growth area in Lakes Entrance, not only to improve drainage and to mitigate flooding, but probably more importantly, to improve the quality of the discharges of stormwater into the Gippsland lakes. And I think, you know, we all understand and accept the importance of the lakes and the need to preserve them.
Too true. Too true. Councillor Crook, you like to speak?
Briefly, just to say for 440,000, it'd want to be a pretty good design, and I have every confidence that it will be. And just to reiterate, the importance of good drainage assets, retention basins and filtration ponds and all those things in all the developments that we do, but particularly for the Lakes Entrance Northern Growth Area, which is vast and steep, and as has been pointed out, drains straight into our oh so precious Gippsland lakes. So I support this motion. Thank you.
Good. Do we have anyone who wishes to speak against? Okay. Any others that wish to speak for the motion? All right. Well, councillors, we can put this to the vote. All those in favour? Again, thank you, councillors. Unanimous.
Thanks for that. She's good value. She understands project management.
Thank you, Renee.
She really is. She's just very matter of fact. Yeah. You ask her a question, she actually gives you the answer. There's no bullshit wraparounds.
I know, but she actually understands.
So our next report is 5.3.1, a trial removal of fees to allow expansion of existing outdoor dining to 30 June 2025. So Ms Johnson, General Manager of Business Excellence, would you please present your report?
Thank you, Mayor. In recognition of the current business environment, councils have requested officers to provide a mechanism to enable existing cafes and restaurants to expand their outdoor seating over the 2024-25 summer season and take advantage of the visitor economy. This can be done through waiving the fee for additional outdoor seating from up until 30th June 2025, and it replicates what this council did during the COVID environment just a few years ago. The permit will allow for the expansion of items on a footpath if business operators meet council's guidelines for fair and safe footpath use and have adequate and relevant assurances, and that's really to protect us in that space. So if we can ensure that we've got equitable access to footpaths for people with disabilities and the footpaths are safe for the community to use in line with our footpath training policy and Section 45 of the General Local Law. The current fee for trading on footpaths is $85 a square metre, just from a user fees perspective, and we have benchmarked that across the closest councils, and it is a reasonable fee, I suppose I would say as well. I don't think that there was much else I needed to say on this particular item, so I'll put it back through to you, Mayor. The report is it's put to you for your consideration.
Thank you. So, well, hands are up already, so I saw a light come on here to my right before I saw a hand to my left. So, Councillor Buckley.
Thank you. So I'm looking at this this recommendation, and my question is one of seeking clarification. So when you say for additional, does that mean that permits will still be required for existing, but it's only for the additional? Because I think the ask from council was to waiver all of the fee. So ones that already have paid, so thank you, through you, Mayor. So the way that we
anticipate this to work, should council vote for it tonight, is that operators that already have paid the fee and have got existing goods on footpaths remains. So if they want to expand that, there's no fee for the expansion of it, as long as it's in line with our goods on footpath policy for the safe and equitable use of the footpaths, as I stated before. So it's not a credit back, I suppose. It's just a trial to say if you need to expand and if you want to expand to take advantage of the summer season, you will not have to pay any fees for that.
So if you're a new person bringing out wanting to use the expansion, you won't have to pay a permit at all,
No, it was envisaged that it was to support existing businesses rather than new businesses, because of the fact that new businesses have to go through the fuller. So the assumption is that an existing business already has the permit and already has the insurances in place. So if they're a new business, they have to apply through us as they normally would, and we would check the insurances and we would check that they're meeting the guidelines, and then we would issue the permit as we normally would.
So I'm still a little bit unclear, because our ask was to provide a full exemption for the permit process, and this is not exactly, from as I'm reading it, the directive that was given originally. So CEO, can you please just explore that?
So when we were asked to put something together for this season, this allows us to do it, given we're 3 days before Christmas sort of thing. This allows us to do that straight away. If councillors want to make an alternate or amendment to the recommendation, they can absolutely do so. Talking to Sarah and the team, this is something that they could do immediately. I knew with confidence that they could do. We still have an obligation to make sure that we've got insurance in place. What you'll see as recommendation 2 and recommendation 3 is that then this would inform a plan to review of the goods on footpaths part of our local law, which would mean that we can look at how we open that up more generally on an ongoing basis. And it would also mean that when you set fees and charges, if you look at recommendation 3, it means that when you consider fees and charges moving forward, you might want to absolve the fee in its entirety for businesses.
Thank you. Mayor, could I move that we go into recess to further discuss this, or into camera, please?
I suppose we could do that.
We could perhaps seek a
short adjournment?
An adjournment, please,
yes.
Yeah. Yes. I'd like to move for an adjournment.
For how long? 10 minutes?
That's plenty.
If we seek an adjournment, we might seek an extension of time at the same time.
I would think that's a good idea. I'm looking at the clock here now. We only have 25 minutes left before we need to extend the meeting with a motion. So perhaps we could do both things at once. So could I ask, well, firstly, you've moved that we have an adjournment. Do we need a seconder for that?
Unless Councillor Buckley would like to move that we have an adjournment and an extension of time for...
All in the one motion?
Yes, please. I'd like to move a motion that we have an adjournment as well as an extension of time of the meeting, please, Mayor.
Your suggestion of extension of time?
Would be...
45 minutes, perhaps?
So
we still have a number of items.
The entire way. I would remind you that our governance rules only allow us to extend the meeting once. So it's better to extend it for longer and then not needed through you, Mayor.
My thoughts exactly, yes.
Yeah, so I'd like to extend the meeting for an hour. Thank you.
That's a good idea, because you add the 10 minutes into that. Yes, that's a good idea. So we'd actually need a seconder for that, please. Seconded by Councillor Crook. And I'll ask for a vote. So all those in favour?
Sorry, everyone.
That is unanimous. So please, with our technicians out there, could you please take us off camera? Thank you, everybody, and welcome back. We've had time to discuss the problems we were having with the this last item, so now we can recommence. Perhaps, Ms Johnson, you might like just to refresh for those who may be online watching.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. So we're discussing the plan to waive the fee for businesses to expand their footprint, so their seating, their outdoor seating over the summer season and up until the 30th of June 2025. So I think we're at the point where we were getting some questions of clarification. So back to you, Mayor.
I think our last person who was holding the floor, had you finished, Councillor Buckley, what your question was? Because Councillor Crook's got a question also.
Yes, certainly, but I would like to also foreshadow an alternate motion.
All right, we'll get a question from Councillor Crook.
Thank you, Mayor. Look, it may be null and void if we move to an alternate motion. I might ask the same question of that if we get to that point. I'm just interested to understand whether officers have forecasted the expense to council of allowing an expansion of the existing trading on footpaths, and if so, how much that would be. Also noting that I am in favour of doing that because I think it will invigorate local business. Thank you.
Thank you for the question. Through you, Mayor. So the estimate cost to the business is $35,000 up until the 30th of June 2025. It's an estimate, so it's not a perfect science. I suppose the other cost that we have to take into account is that we still have to process the permits. We still have to check them. We still have to enforce them if businesses are saying that that areas aren't meeting the particular compliance part. So there's still an administrative cost plus the revenue that we won't get in from doing that.
Councillors, any more questions? Yes, Councillor Farquhar.
How many businesses are we talking about, roughly?
It's a very good question, Councillor Farquhar. I might refer to the Manager of Governance to see if she knows that detail. Otherwise, I can come back to you. No, she doesn't. It's fine. I don't think we're talking quite a few, but we're not talking thousands, if that gives you some indication.
Often referred to as a question on notice. We'll get back to you. So, if that's the last question, then we have you, Councillor Buckley, wishing to move an alternative motion because nobody's moved the motion already, so I think you could go ahead. Yes, which is yes. Thank you.
Yes, so I wish to call for an alternative motion, which could we populate the screen, please?
It's just a motion. It's
the substantive motion or the motion? Yeah, stand corrected, thank you. That council approves the trial of not charging a fee for new and existing businesses to seek additional lawful and compliant seating at cafes and restaurants in the East Gippsland Shire from 20th of December 2024 to the 30th of June 2025. And 2, notes that learnings from the trial will inform the planned review of the goods on footpath policy in mid-2025. And 3, notes that the council will have further opportunity to consider how to simplify trading on footpaths and a range of other businesses permits in 2025 when the East Gippsland Shire Council General Local Law is reviewed.
Good. So we need a seconder for that. Yep. So thank you, Councillor Travaskis. So would you now like to speak?
Thank you,
to
Mayor.
This motion.
Firstly, may I acknowledge Councillor Travaskis as the councillor that brought this into the council chambers to discuss. So thank you, Councillor Travaskis. I think it was a very good process to go through. It's something that will provide economic benefits for not only for the businesses themselves, but for the region, because it will encourage the expansion, especially during the Christmas period of time, for outdoor trading. and we're looking as if it's going to be pretty good weather up in this neck of the woods, and we'd like to see this as a forward view or a lens over what's possible into the future, and to ease the burden of, the financial times that we see ourselves in. And I think that it also, the impetus was in the timber transition towns that are struggling to give them some reprieve, but it grew into the whole region receiving the same benefit. So just an acknowledgement to the work of the officers, the councillors and Councillor Travascus. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Buckley. So, Councillor Travascus, you've seconded it. Would you like to speak to the motion?
Yes, thanks. There's a bit of a financial cost to the council, I suppose, and it's a small financial benefit to the people doing it. But I think it's the idea that we recognise that there are troubles out there, that especially with the food industry, that's a bit of a litmus group, I think. But it's not just the financial side; it's just it's that psychological thing as well, that people are standing with you. I can remember years ago with Beef Check, the proper one that started about 20 years ago. You go to a group and we're all in trouble. You think by yourself, you're having trouble through a drought time. You get with others, they're experiencing the same trouble, you feel much better, strangely. And when you acknowledge that maybe there is trouble, you feel better about yourself. It's not just me that's doing it. So there's a big psychological thing, I think, as well. Also, if this can be enhanced by, for instance, the Chamber of Commerce and do a bit of something else in the area, like putting up extra umbrellas or something like that, just to bring about a change in the, for instance, Orbost, the look of the street. It's become more attractive to tourists. They'll stop longer. That whole psychological thing, I think, is worth thinking about. Thank you.
Thank you. Well spoken. So I suppose I have to say this, but is the motion opposed? No. That's good to see. So how about, does anyone else wish to speak to this? Councillor Crook?
Yes, thanks, Mayor. Look, I think this is a good idea. Increasing the amount of people dining on the street, the amount of street trading, it increases a level of vibrancy in our communities that I think if you go to places where that's very common, or in areas of our own Shire, in fact, where that's very common, it brings a certain vibe that is a good vibe that we all like. So I support that idea. I think probably for me, one of the best parts about this motion is in fact point 3, that will allow us to consider how to simplify trading on footpaths more generally. So it won't just pertain to dining and extra seating at our cafes. It may extend to, the sale of goods from footpaths as well. I know certainly in other areas where that's much more prevalent, again, it increases that street vibe. If there are more things on the street, people spend more time on the street. They don't just walk past the shops, they stop, they spend money, they commune, they spend time together. It creates a more communal feeling, which is good. So I'm happy to support it. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Councillor Crook. Anyone else wish to speak? I see no one. So at this stage, we'll put this motion to the vote. So, yeah, that's fine. Yeah, I don't know what that hand gesture was for. So I would say that the motion is passed unanimously. Thank you. Another one for Ms Johnson. This is 5.3.2, S11A, Instrument of Appointment and Authorisation Planning and Environment Act 1987. So would you please like to speak to your
Absolutely.
item? Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. So this report is seeking to renew the Section 11A Instruments of Appointment approved by the previous council that is still required for our planning staff, approve a new instrument of appointment and revoke an instrument of an appointment. So if I just give you a little bit of the key points on this one. Council officers are appointed as authorised officers to exercise statutory powers under various acts, regulations and local laws in accordance with the provisions that are granted to them. In most cases, authorised officers are appointed by the Chief Executive Officer through the power of delegation. However, the Planning and Environment Act specifically requires that authorised officers be appointed by a resolution of Council. Following the recent council election, a review of the existing authorisations has been undertaken, which makes sure that we've got the assurance that all staff authorised under the Section 11A instrument are appropriately maintained and endorsed by the current council. What the review has identified is that there are 12 officers that are still required to undertake the unauthorised officer duty as part of their role. We've got one new appointment, being Andrew Thompson, the council's arborist, to be an addition. And then we've got one to be revoked for Nicole Reynolds as the Principal Strategic Planner, and it's no longer required for her because she's had a role change in the organisation. So that is probably all from me, Mayor. The report is presented to you. Thank you.
Thank you. So, councillors, you obviously read this report, so are there any questions? I thought not. It is quite straightforward. So could I please, Councillor Crook? Councillor Allen, thank you. So please.
Yes, happy to move this. Thank you, Mayor. It's very procedural in nature. It's a requirement under the Act that our officers are lawfully undertaking their duties, and this is a requirement of that legality. So happy to endorse the officer's recommendation in the report. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Councillor Allen.
Nothing to add, thanks, Mayor.
No, that's okay. So anyone else wish to speak against or also more to speak for the motion? I see none, so I think we can move on to putting that to the vote. So all those in favour? Thank you, councillors. This is a unanimous decision again. Thank you, Ms Johnson. Right. So that CEO brings us to item 7, which is confidential business. So we do have an item.
Thanks, Mayor, and we have no, I can just confirm we have no urgent business so at item 6, so we can move straight to
Thank you.
To confidential business, and yes, we have one matter.
So because it's confidential, we need to close the meeting to the public. So I see Councillor Allen has his hand up and Sonia to second it. So, so the motion is that Council close the meeting to the public in accordance with the provision of Section 66(2) of the Local Government Act 2020 to consider the following list of items. So, so I would probably ask that you speak to this, that we move. Yeah.
No need to speak, thanks, Mayor.
Okay. No.
I concur.
Good. Okay, well, I'll put this to the vote. All those in favour of us going in camera? That's unanimous. Thank you. And thank you, officers, if you could please questions, please could you reopen the meeting so as I can say good night to those people who are still watching? Good to those people who may still be online. Welcome back and thank you for your patience. Thank you, councillors. That concludes the proceedings for tonight's meeting. Thank you everyone in the public gallery and those watching online. I now declare the meeting closed at 9:22 p.m. Thank you, everybody.